Crossroads channel of light fluid. Welcome back to Khemia. Yes, just came out a couple of days ago. This is the new version of Khemia starting here, and we're going to start from the beginning once again. If you're interested, Khemia Mark 1, as I've entitled everything, has its own little playlist. The videos are still up on the channel. You can search them if you want, but they won't be directly linked to this version to avoid confusion. But I have read this. I think you're going to like the changes here, and it's really great to be back into this world again. So, without any more ado, let's hit start. I lay back in the cool blackness of my mind, listening to the voices banter. It must be, I can hear him from here. Are you sure it is him that you hear? I'm very sure. Dark bluish fur, cream-coloured front, ear tips and muzzle. You just described 500,000 wolves on Ad Astra. Corrective lenses as well. It's nice. A sort of half meditation my mindfulness teacher once taught me several years ago. Thoughts that come unbidden to the mind are not uncommon during meditation, but this time it's quite different. Usually the thoughts don't have a clear purpose and offer little insight, unless one delves into implied and likely non-existent meanings. So, what's your explanation? I'm going crazy? Won't be the first time. No, just that you should be careful when trying to reach that far. The mind can often be one massive illusion to its owner, especially concerning non-tangible matters. Now they very much have a purpose, speaking about me. Still, it helps to calm my mind, pull it inward from the outward chaos. It helps me forget the responsibilities that rest upon my shoulders. They mainly rest upon my mentor's shoulders, but in turn he rests on mine. His mind, it's not sound. It's been altered. That's a common feature for those like you. I frown, feeling as if these voices are being rather rude now, for I try to avoid the distraction. Focus. Instead, I admire the way I'm able to isolate my mind in a place such as this. For many months afterwards, setting foot within these walls or even on the campus grounds would fill me with such dread. I simply could not function properly. Now I imagine that incident, a sphere of suffering and shock, to be in a different place in time and space, floating in nothingness. Ahewawi. I feel it. I feel my focus falter again, hearing what vaguely sounds Khemian, almost like the word for pain. The altered suffix indicates something less solid, more ethereal. See? He hears me. Don't alert him to our presence. So now he believe me. Besides, he's already alert. He's just ignoring us. Like I said, he's gifted. But fine, you can relax. I'll stop. Focus. I instead ponder why my mind might be thinking of pain, and an imagery, visceral and vivid, flashes through my mind's eye. Those events are 3 years behind me now. Not only that, but the point in space in which the riots occurred is billions of kilometres behind me. That small sphere adrift in time and space. A dark void that I shall never return to. And it continues to move away as our galaxy spins through the ever-expanding universe. The halls of the university are only an illusion of a constant space. Rather, we're at a different point in the universe every moment we exist, whether that be at home, school, or on a diplomatic mission to Khemia. Therefore, I'm free from that moment and that place. Now I am in a clean space, and that's true for every moment I exist. That's exactly the kind of space I need to exist in mentally, especially if I want to keep this assignment. The type of assignment I've wanted my whole life. The exact one, if I'd known such an opportunity would exist. A sound mind is one of my most important assets. The past is in the past. And yet, the frame of the space is constant. The marble, the statues, the lecture halls. These are all here when it happened, and they are here now. So is it really clean? Stone does not live, therefore it cannot witness. It cannot be corrupted like the minds of sapients. But is that even true? I realise my meditation is veering off course. It's easy to be distracted when you're lying on a marble bench and your head is beginning to ache. It follows him. I know. My concentration is broken by the strange, now ominous thoughts, and I sigh. No one should send a message about this to my mindfulness instructor. But I won't, because my mission is far too close now. I doubt uncontrolled thoughts will look good in any briefing to my superiors. I begin the process of grounding, rubbing my paws over the cool, polished marble. Have these marble benches and pillars, the facade of this building, witnessed and absorbed the lives that spoke and moved around them before now? If so, then simply distancing myself from a point in space is useless, as the objects most important to that event continue to exist nearby. The idea of buildings possessing a character or conscience isn't my own. Over a year ago, my instruction architecture had said that long-lasting structures assume identities more distinct than the people who built them, especially as time. We witnessed it. We saw you bleed because of them. I open my eyes, my fur bristling and my breath hitching before I hold it, listening. For all I hear are maybe leaves blown by the wind outside, an echo of what the voice had sounded like. I'm disturbed by that voice, much different from the first two I'd been hearing. More worryingly, thought it had been so loud and clear. I thought it had been spoken by someone, till I opened my eyes and found the room empty. In fact, I pinpointed to the statue right in front of me, the one of the spy Antonia, crouching on her pedestal. A strange, dark feeling enters my mind as I frown, staring at it. I'd certainly heard something from that direction, like a whisper. And though I try to prevent it, my mind wanders to a more pup-like state. There is no question this university is filled with an amalgamated spirits, and even in the bright morning light that pours through the windows, Antonia appears eerie to me. The most famous deed was being an asymptomatic carrier of Lucius fever while a prisoner on Khemia, the outbreak killing hundreds of thousands, a death toll worse for the jackals than any of the battles waged during the war. If any statue is haunted, it is likely hers. As I move to sit up, she seems to follow me with her gaze. Not just her eyes, but her head as well. And it's so distinct that I have to... Scipio! Oh, gods! I leap into the air, stumbling away from the sudden voice and movement. Veteris, why'd you shout? Am I shouting? I consider this to be perfectly reasonable volume. I suppose my advancement in age only continues, and you must learn to live with it. I rub my chest, looking over the statue as that strange, dark feeling slowly dissipates. You did not wait for me at the entrance to the forest this morning, thus my journey was rather dull. You found me all that interesting? I banished the disturbed thoughts from my mind for now, turning my back to the statue of Antonia. Well, I do know you managed to capture the full attention of the flower jackal over the past few months. He is the most interesting. Yet you insult him in the same breath. Of course that was the reason, considering our conversations always turned toward that jackal. It is a jackal and a flower. What of it? He's a Khemian and his name is Neferu. Even Khemians have the boundaries of gender. That jackal seems just as happy to be treated as a woman as he is a man. I bite my tongue, feeling the chasm between our differences in age widen just a bit further. Viteris was once thought of a leading social progressive, back in the days that Amicus's father, Emperor Potus, ruled. Now, with Amicus on the throne, much has changed, and the current emperor is quite popular among wolves in my age demographic. Not so much with Viteris's. As much as I enjoy your conversations on topics such as the latest Khemian fashions and imported amusement tech, I was actually asked by Amicus to discuss a few things with you. I feel a falling feeling in my chest, wondering if I've done something wrong. 2 years ago, Viteris had picked his top 3 students of Khemian history, language and culture to train and compete to become his assistant and backup for the mission. I'd been one of them, and just last week I was officially chosen by both Amicus and Viteris. This despite the fact I was solidly middling between the other 2 students in our academic marks. Carbo should have been the one to go, able to speak almost in an accented Khemian, and he always knew the answer about Khemian history. I had realised that no matter how much I studied, he would always be ahead. My recent, almost desperate attempts to stand out had ended up paying off. When I'd been chosen, I was certain it was a dream. I wonder if reality is about to catch up with me. It had probably been clear over the past few years that my mind hasn't always been in the present. And to discuss this in your studies, Scipio, it's so very close by. I nod and follow, trying to keep my expression neutral so as to avoid embarrassment, no matter which way this discussion leads. Viteris looks over the stacks of books and papers, the bridge of his aged muzzle wrinkling slightly, the grey and fur bristling. Honestly, Scipio, all I need to tell you is your clutter directly reflects your mind. You're feeling overwhelmed. Clean up your workspace is the first step. I wince. I can't stop the blush from spreading across my own muzzle. We are very different in this regard as well. I'd been to Viteris's residence on a handful of occasions, and while his study was indeed clean, the rest of it was not. Maybe it's a representation of one aspect of his life that he has in order, having abandoned his personal life before becoming an instructor. My study, which often doubles my sleeping quarters after being selected 2 years previously, is one usually reserved for assistant instructors. It's a bit more than cluttered. And must you always light incense? At least pick a different scent than Oliban. It reminds me of my grandmother. I had been expecting that comment. Being caught completely off guard, I stumble for words, but I'm saved from having to make up a reason by the Imperial computer assistant. Good day, Scipio. Would you like your usual brunch? No, thank. Yes, bring it. You need to begin taking care of yourself more now you're going to be a diplomat. That involves eating regularly. Despite Viteris sounding strangely like my mother for a moment, immediately sets me at ease, knowing he wouldn't say that if I had been dropped from the mission. And as I see a drone descend from the ceiling with bread and sauce, I feel my appetite return. Now, do you know why you were picked to accompany the mission? I try to think of a reason that won't make me sound too egotistical. My knowledge of Khemia, especially the youth culture there? Viteris waves his paw. Oh, please, Khemian youth culture. Viteris says the word with twice the emphasis and half the speed as the others. Does not matter. Besides, Carbo knew more than you. I blush, even though it's a completely true and fair statement. Well, the only other reason that comes to mind might be my relationship to Neferu. Yeah, and Brunis. You cultivated casual Khemian friendships with them with very little effort. Of course. I did know that forming some type of relationship with the actual Khemians we have here was important. Over the past year, I've made time to speak to them after each of our meetings, making sure to casually greet them and engage in causerie, which I knew Viteris and Amicus took notice of. While Carbo usually had his nose in a book, I was talking to real Khemians in a casual and friendly way. I wouldn't say that I know most of them as well as the few wolves I've considered my friends over the years, but I needed some type of advantage over Carbo. I'd felt bad at the time, remembering his expression of confusion and disbelief as he left the Imperial Palace after being dismissed from his current duties. But really, I know his future as a prestigious scholar is almost guaranteed, and at the very least the stresses of this mission are now over for him. Now it seems like I need to focus even more on interacting with these Chemians. It only makes sense considering the main mission is to expand Adastra's relations with Khemia. Where did you learn to do that, by the way? Viteris eyes me curiously as I arrange a plate amongst the scatterings of books and Chemian tech. I mean, it's not difficult, you simply... It is very difficult for a wolf. Casual friendships are only great opportunities for casual betrayals. However... He glances at me from under his bushy brows. It provides opportunity for the casual gathering of intelligence as well. I feel my stomach turn again, despite knowing this would be part of my assignment as a diplomat. Doesn't mean that I'm eager to do it. Still, the topic had never really come up. With the departure date apparently nearing faster than expected, I'd hoped that I would somehow be exempt. You want me to spy? I say it evenly, in a way I hope doesn't betray the hesitance and lack of confidence I feel. Amicus would simply like for you to keep an eye on them. As we know by now, Chemian bluntness is a myth. We can never be sure of their true intentions. While the feelings of friendliness I have towards the Chemians are genuine, I remind myself that I did become their friend with the main purpose of personal gain, along with the knowledge that I would be reporting anything of importance they said. I must admit that academia is my strong point, Viteris. I'm not sure. You accepted the position of a diplomat. Thus you accepted the responsibility to gather intelligence for your emperor. It is part of your many responsibilities now. Of course, teacher, but where do I even start? I'm not trained in espionage, so shouldn't there be more time for me to train for such a thing? Don't ask me. I'm simply a part-time teacher and full-time advisor to the emperor on Chemian politics and culture. He only wanted me to prepare you mentally. Feels like a completely different discipline. Viteris waves his paw again. The reason you're not formally trained in spying is because this type of spying is merely information gathering through individual relationships and larger networks. That makes me feel a bit better. I see. As far as I know, the real spies, who I imagine are being trained now, though again I wouldn't know, come along once regular relations have been established. In the meantime, this casual espionage will do, keeping your enemies close, as they say. And no, I'm not saying they're enemies personally, but you understand. I think as I chew on the bread slowly, the tangy sauce reminded me of how hungry I am. You feel you're up to the task? A target like Neferu should be a lucrative one. I smile. Of course, I did accept the position, like you said. However, Neferu is smart enough to have you believe. I doubt he'll give away anything important. Oh no, that jackal's head is full of sand. Even the Emperor has publicly said so. I know that it most definitely isn't. I suppose that's why I'm the one who's meant to spy on him. And Brunus is even more guarded. He's a trained negotiator and seasoned diplomat. Viteris laughs at me. With his informal and coarse nature? I doubt it, but remember, Neferu is the main target. I have to stop myself from laughing at my own mentor. Have you not considered they are planting them so as to spy on us? That gives my teacher pause. Then he shrugs. If they are, then there are some serious issues in the uppermost echelons of Chemian power. Besides, everyone knows the Pharaoh sent him here as a form of punishment. I mean, he hates his son so much, he set him up to live in the same palace with the general from the last war, a general who would unsurprisingly kick his balls into orbit. Ha! I sigh, feeling sorry for the jackal like I always do when I remember that event, immortalised by drone footage. A reminder that your meeting with the Emperor begins in approximately 10 minutes. Please be present and ready in Lecture Hall 1. Viteris watches me as I eat the rest of the loaf of bread quickly. Also, start becoming more conscious of what you consume and consider some exercise. The jackal seems to lean towards fit body types. You're fine as you are now, but you're nearing the age where it might start to slip. That almost makes me choke, hoping my ears don't betray the embarrassment I feel at hearing my mentor say such things about my own body. Especially considering he was the one to insist I eat in the first place. Ten minutes later, I'm in the lecture hall with Viteris, along with Amicus, Neferu, Brunus, and Virginia. These bi-weekly meetings feel very different now than my 2 peers are gone. Me being the youngest and least important part of the envoys made all the more obvious. But aside from that, business progresses as usual. It's a rather casual affair, if not a depressing one due to Adastra's lack of progress with Khemia. Not much can get done at this point, lest Khemian equivalents to Amicus show up on the stretch drive and make the decisions in person. That hasn't happened in months, and while Neferu is certainly important, he isn't as important as his brother, the Vizier. So instead we discuss how Wolvish society and culture should approach its various Khemian counterparts. I'm paying fairly close attention to topics about diplomatic language. How on Khemia one must always use words, never fists, as Khemians see the latter as a sign of weakness and lacking control. But then Amicus and Neferu argue for a while about how wolves must learn to separate diplomatic language from outright lies, which Amicus argues is the same thing. Especially as times change, our needs change, therefore some promises cannot be kept. Yes, but one unkept promise can be enough to ruin a generation. An adversary or even an ally does not hold up to their part of the bargain, no matter the change in times, is branded unreliable, and relations are unlikely to progress in any form. I found myself agreeing with Neferu, even though I'd never, ever say such a thing out loud. Especially not here. Earth Report number 134 has arrived. Shall I brief you on its contents, Emperor Amicus? Their argument interrupted, Amicus pauses, then gives a terse yes as a response, likely knowing the news would not be good. It rarely is when coming from Earth. Earth. The planet only learned of last week after being chosen, along with the ongoing efforts to integrate its humans into the Galaxius. The human who once resided in the palace is on his own mission, trying to bring the parents' vision to fruition. I'm curious about them. This part of the mission is not for me to know, only having been introduced to the concept so Amicus can think about and discuss it freely. So I lower my eyes as the briefing begins, and I'm still able to feel Amicus's mood darken. You will recall that 3 days ago, after the deaths of 3 American diplomats who came into contact with the human, it had been discovered that he sporadically shed an aviapox virus. Unfortunately, there have been further developments in which one of the diplomats visited an establishment that serves food and beverage. 4 British officials were infected by this diplomat and all subsequently perished in the past 2 days. The human has been placed in quarantine and talks between nations have come to a halt for the time being. The United States of America, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland have jointly threatened to withdraw from talks if there are further casualties. However, there appears to be no further spread of the virus at this time, likely due to the rapid onset of symptoms and, so far, 100% mortality rate in humans. I don't understand many of the Earth words, but I understand enough. How can aviapox be so lethal to these humans? No other primates we know of have trouble with it. And these threats to end talks have been part of the Galaxius. How frustrating the 2 states can halt an entire world from progressing. I'm quietly relieved the hard borders of our past are over now, at least. Amicus grumbles under his breath. How could they be so goddamn stupid? At first I wonder if he's talking about the humans, which I find unfair. Then I realise he might be speaking of the parents, which I find terrifying. Then he raises his voice. Do we know of any sapiens that can contract aviapox and remain contagious after initial infection? No, Emperor Amicus. I'm not an expert on infectious diseases by any means, but considering how little we know of the effects of the virus on humans, anything could be possible. Yes, and due to parental negligence, he's in quarantine. Well, I'm beginning to think we need to bring him back, like back here, back home. Amicus almost shouts. If my fear of the parents wasn't obvious before, now it is, my eyes wide open. The parents do work and the most mysterious. By making my human appear as if he's a bioweapon? What the hell are they playing at? We witnessed it. I remember a rustle of leaves and quickly steered my mind away from what I heard on the bench. Virginia, who had been silent in most of the discussion, clears her throat. Unfortunately, Amicus, we know the parents are not able to foresee all things. We can only fulfill our own duties on our own plane of existence. Amicus takes a deep breath, sighing loudly. I know his relationship with the human is close. Everyone knows this based on what we saw during his fight with Cato, though how close is wildly different depending on who you ask. It's clear he's more rattled than I've ever seen him, though, his paws shaking on his knees. Speaking of which, you had something to announce our envoy before the Empire as a whole, correct?
Oh, did I?
Virginia sighs.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry, sister. The parental catastrophe on Earth had me slightly distracted.
Again, I feel an ominous cloud over us, as if the parents themselves have entered the room in disapproval.
As you all know, our discussions with the Vizier and Pharaoh have stalled over the past few months. To show Khemia that Astra is truly dedicated to an alliance.
Amicus swallows, as if he's having trouble getting the words out of his throat.
I will also be John the Envoy, despite the many hardships it will bring our empire. I do believe the benefits will outweigh the cost. Khemia has accepted my request.
Oh, so you'll be joining us? I'm surprised. Even I wouldn't have given in to Father's pompous and unreasonable demands so easily. Having Amicus with us changes the dynamics of the entire mission, and while reassuring, knowing my Emperor will be there the entire time just makes it all a bit more stressful.
Talks have been stalled for 3 months, Neferu. Anyway, during this time Virginia will fill the role of acting Empress.
Now my muzzle is hanging open, if only because it's the first time I've heard such words put together. Viteris visibly blanches, while Neferu and Brunis barely react at all. I quickly snap my mouth closed. Thank you, my Emperor. I'll perform my duties in a way that honours both the Empire and you, brother.
You always do, Virginia. This means we should all keep in mind the fact that departure could occur any day now, depending on when the ship arrives.
I almost gasp, instead disguised with a stifled cough. The last few meetings had indicated a fast approaching departure. The possibility that it could only be days or even a day away causes my heart to pound in my chest. I calm myself, remembering that my task is rather simple. No need to be anxious. At least all my tasks not involving Neferu, anyway.
No, I must be off to have a discussion with the parents once again, to make sure we're actually still on some sort of track.
It's dark by the time we're heading out. On the way, Amicus corners me to covertly ask if I had a discussion with Viteris, which I confirm. Then the Emperor glances over at Neferu, who's leaning up against the pillar. I take the hint, and as everyone else leaves, I approach a jackal, suddenly feeling nervous. Likely because I have ulterior motives now, and that doesn't feel good. But I know if I'm to perform my role well, I shouldn't be feeling any different at all. Well, hello there, Chosen One. Usually it is me that approaches you, is it not? Is something catching your eye? I try to work out if that's a normal thing Neferu would say, deciding that my boldness must be causing him to act even more forward than usual. I shrug as casually as possible. Well, considering my role is now certain, I thought we should better acquaint ourselves. Is that so? Well, how do you think we could best do that? The tone in Neferu's voice has its usual playful lilt, with an underlying pointedness that makes me flush just a bit under my fur. Well, I sidestep his theatrics and games for now, realising that taking the lead is too far of my character when interacting with Neferu. Do you have any interesting plans for the night? Maybe you can help me better understand the Khemian way of things. That would be rather difficult to do here on Astra, but as for plans, not particularly.
Hey, ready to go, Neff? Oh, hey there, Skip.
Hello, Brunis. I'm at least able to avoid wincing now whenever they use the pet name for Scipio, one usually reserved for pups. Yeah, it depends, Brunis. First, I was meaning to ask Skip if he'd like to visit a den with me. I blink. That's not exactly something you say loudly in such a quiet and hollow echoing room. I'd been on the verge of simply asking if I'd join the two of them to make my attempt to fill my new role less conspicuous. It's also something he's never asked me, despite his notoriously promiscuous reputation. Is it because I'm now guaranteed? Would he have asked the same of Carbo? Imagining that bookish wolf in this situation is, well, it's unimaginable. I can at least say I'm experienced, visiting a den with a partner. Well,
Well, all right then. Have fun, you two.
The giant creatures can wait for my response before turning and heading out, leaving me alone with Neferu and the empty university. He's still waiting on an answer. Back during my university days, if I became friendly with another attractive wolf, male or female, we'd usually make stops at taverns or entertainment venues before possibly ending up in a den. It was a weekly occurrence during my first few years attending this school, and yet my heart flutters like I'm 10 years younger, about to experience a den for the first time. Yes, I'd like to.
Wonderful.
I feel embarrassingly warm at the idea of a Khemian finding me attractive enough to bring me to a den. I quickly remind myself of my mission. Whether or not I find the jackal charming or attractive matters not. I have a job to do. The Pharaoh offers me his arm as if escorting me. There's an establishment in the Clay District we can go to.
The Clay District?
The surprise and hesitation in my voice is obvious.
Sorry. Would you rather go somewhere else? It's simply somewhat close by, but I don't want to make you uncomfortable if you have a problem with that place.
Well, it's more the place has a problem with me. They're not fond of the elite. I say it with some feigned exasperation, not really feeling elite in any way. I raise my paw to my mane, flipping the fur there casually.
Oh, yes. Apologies for not remembering. Maybe we can catch up to Brute.
Sensing the Pharaoh pulling back from the initial offer, I place a paw on his proffered arm. It's been a while since any so-called elites have been attacked in the streets. Besides, I'm curious what his story might be like, considering you want to go. I give the Pharaoh the chance to explain, but he simply smiles at me.
Well, I'll keep you safe, either way.
The jackal keeps my arm around his the entire time. I speculate there's some sort of Khemian ritual for sexual intercourse, and I begin taking mental notes. Meanwhile, I enjoy the feel of his thick bicep flexing slightly under the incredibly short fur, practically just a black velvet covering his defined muscles. I quickly forget about the other, possibly hostile pedestrians as we get closer to the dens. They're not looking at me anyway. I'm annoyed at myself for still feeling nervous, and also feeling a bit taken by this jackal. The entrance is a shabby side door when the Pharaoh signs in and pays, ignoring the stairs with ease, and I find myself becoming a bit annoyed with the other wolves, breaking den etiquette just because he's a Khemian. I suppose I shouldn't expect anything different from those in the Clay District. Then we're led down a narrow hall into the room the Pharaoh rented. The lights are dimmed low and the Pharaoh fumbles with a switch while I go to sit on the bed. As the artificial compluvium above us glows more brightly, I can tell it's one of the most expensive rooms in the establishment. It's still a bit cramped, slightly tacky, but pleasant and far more luxurious than any den room I've been in. I wonder if the lighted expansive ceiling is what the Pharaoh comes here for, considering how large and convincing it is, despite the room being completely closed off from the outside. Still, dens are mainly frequented by students on their third warning for fornicating on campus. I still live on campus, and so technically still must follow those rules, but I know Neferu lives in the Imperial District, where he likely lives in a fairly nice place. And if there were a reason Neferu doesn't want to go to his living quarters, there are, I assume, higher quality dens in that district. But Neferu is paid, and I'm not about to be rude and question him now. I assume you're familiar with this type of place? I glance at him, and he smiles toothily. I realise then how brazenly he's posed himself, having already dropped his Khemian garb, now in just his underwear. I notice his undergarments are woven, likely having had to make the switch after being here for over 3 years now. Swallowing hard, I stare, taking all of it in, feeling more nervous by the second. Sexual intercourse of any kind is forbidden on the grounds of Varus University, so yes, I've been to a few. The Pharaoh rolls his eyes, grabbing a bottle of the complimentary wine. And so is masturbation, I've heard. And here I thought wolves were sexually liberated. Well, we are. It just happens to be the leading university on the moon, and the philosophy of this school does not include carnal thoughts. I find myself talking too much, and trail off as the Pharaoh leans casually against the armrest, drinking straight from the bottle. I attended the best university in the Galaxias, and there were rooms dedicated to the act on campus.
I bristle just slightly at the dig at my school, even if it's true that most every famous school in Khemia is superior. After that comment, though, I decided to try out some Khemian bluntness, about to ask why he's brought me here instead of his own place. Either way, why come to a den when... Then he walks up to me, right up close to me, the point I feel my nose is going to bump the mound in his undergarments. Anyway, to celebrate your promotion, I thought I'd help you with your research on Khemians. Have you ever copulated with one? My throat is suddenly very dry as I shake my head, even though I know he knows the answer to that. Well... The jackal stands up straighter, putting his physique on display. Just as I had felt earlier, I see his fur is much shorter compared to mine, given the advantage of being able to show off the muscles on his chest and stomach. He then grabs his undergarments and slides them down. The jackal is moving boldly, in a way that makes me wonder if he's trying to make it less strange for me, seeing Khemian anatomy in person for the first time. Although I know what to expect, I'm still left staring in fascination. While very different from my own, it fits well on his frame. As he moves closer, I find myself reaching out, sliding my paws up his thighs, then back around to cup his rear. This is the moment my hesitance drops. I pull the jackal in close, kissing his bare privates and abdomen, making him gasp. It's a long session of sorts, though not very much happens, so Neferu seems to simply enjoy touching me. First I'm a bit confused, unsure if it's some type of foreplay. Then I realize he's encouraging me to explore and touch back, and at some point we simply end up entangled together, lying there. His arms are around me tightly, and I can smell the wine on his breath. Maybe it's a bit rude, but all this makes me genuinely wonder if he's lonely. As our movements ease to stillness, I reach back to rest a paw on his shoulder, just in case he needs reassurance, and I slowly fall asleep. I wake up. What happens in the following moment is something that my mind is never able to fully process. The door to our den is open. I wonder why, because it should have been locked. Is Neferu... As I reach for my glasses, I realise he's sleeping next to me. But that's when a large, dark figure stands up beside our bed. A wolf who I don't know, his scent simply telling me he's a stranger, and a male. There's something in his paw, and for a moment I try to yell, but nothing happens. The dark, blocky shape of his head turns in my direction, noticing me awake, and my insides turn to water. He moves. Then there's a harsh, ear-splitting crack, and before my eyes I see the man, the sapient, bend and warp in the shape of a wave before blasting apart. I'm splattered by wetness, by smells and feelings I haven't felt since... The light goes on, floating around us, displaying the horror. What the hell happened? Come! Neferu is now moving around beside me, but I can't move. I smell this person all over me. I'm covered in him, tasting his blood, viscera, and more in my muzzle. An assassination was attempted on the lives of Neferu and Scipio. Separatist connections are suspected. Amicus has been notified. The drone's small built-in speaker makes Com's voice sound harsh. As its light turns to illuminate the wall, I see everything. No. Target fully neutralized. Bodily state is incompatible with life. No. Escape? I grasp at my mane. I feel them pulling at it. They're going to pull me out onto the streets. What? Neferu finally focuses on me after fumbling around for the lights. I need to... I can't breathe. I roll off the bed, feeling the blood and soft fleshy masses in my fur as I try to crawl into the bed, but I find no space. Then I crawl behind the sofa, still covering my mane, avoiding the blood in the streets, avoiding the men with bricks torn from the university. I avoid looking at one of my old professors in rhetoric as he gets his head smashed in with one of those bricks, the men taunting him, asking if his fancy words can save him now. I cover my eyes, waiting. Someone... Neferu...
touches my shoulder. It's like I'm in 2 times and places at once. But the touch, it begins to ground me. Still, I cover my mane and tremble until finally able to bring the present back to focus, one that's not much better than the past. I look up and see Neferu staring at me. He's seen it. He sees what's wrong with me. I'm certain I'm not going to Khemia anymore. What follows is a patchy, blurry mess that my memory's never able to put together. It's like during my first years of university, getting far too inebriated at the bar, only to wake up with a rage and headache, and I hope I didn't do anything too awful the night before. But there's no joy in this feeling of inebriation, just numbness. There are a few things I'm able to remember, though I'm unsure if it's real or imagined. Wolves come into the room. I don't know if they're from the establishment or if they're Imperial officials. More drones follow. I know these are from the palace because only the Imperial family owns drones. Then I'm on a small ship. All the while I'm trembling, I can't stop despite not feeling cold, or really any distinct emotion at all. Neferu tries to speak to me every now and then, but seems to give up after I only offer one-worded answers. I thought I was done with this. But it's just like the first night after it happened. Like it's never left me. I'm still broken. Then I'm being ushered out of the ship by Neferu. Com is talking to us, but I'm not paying attention to him. It's like my mind is crowded with too many thoughts, yet I'm not thinking of anything. Or at least I'm trying not to think of anything. Vaguely aware of the fact that Neferu had been cleaning my fur on the way here, yet the smell is still all over me. I've heard that jackals have a weaker sense of smell, or at least not as sensitive as that of a wolf. Now that I'm focusing on the smell, I keel over and retch violently. Tep! I'm jerked to the side, and at first I think Neferu pushed me away. I wouldn't fault him for it. But instead he's positioned me over the bushes to be sick into them instead of on the path. Not much comes up, just the wine from earlier, and it burns worse than I remember from my younger years. All the while Neferu is holding back my mane, just like my schoolmates might have back in those days. Before the riots, anyway. Those events seem to knock the innocence and wonder of being at the university right out of us. Amicus insists you meet him in the palace. Oh, God, then we're on our way. Skip isn't well. No, don't tell him that. I'm fine. I straighten up purposefully, taking a deep breath, only to breathe in the scent of the assassin. It filtered through my nostrils as fresh as when he first splattered through our room. Again I gave a great retch. I'm empty and nothing comes up this time. Skip, what's wrong? Were you injured? Are you sick? Yes, that's it. Yes, I'm physically ill. I steady my feet again, then straighten up my posture, setting off in the direction of the palace while Neferu follows along, his paw on my back. I shrug him off, only to appear as if I need steadying, like I'm some woman about to faint. I was feeling off earlier in the evening, and I suppose it's developed further. I'm feeling better now, though. I'm regaining my composure. I begin my breathing exercises, the ones that usually steady my pause and racing thoughts. Still, even as I slow my breathing, my vision continues to blacken at the edges, in ebbs and flows, a constant threat that I might lose consciousness. That is the one thing I cannot do right now, not in front of the men who are in charge of this mission. Too much depends on this. Somehow, over the course of 20 paces, I'm able to focus my mind and recompose my outward demeanour, all by blocking out what just happened. I've worked my way up and up to this position for far too long. I will not fall now, will not let the heights I've reached be used against me. Still, I know what I'm doing isn't going to help tomorrow, or the next day, or the next. But that's unimportant right now. Come on, Amicus is waiting. I don't look at him, but I can tell Neferu is staring at me as he follows along at my side, and I can tell he wants to ask further questions. Of course he does, but thank the gods, he keeps silent as we turn to walk through the archway into the palace.
I've only been inside the palace twice. The first time was 2 years ago, with the 2 other assistants in training, when Amicus interviewed the 3 of us before sending us back to the university. The last time was last week, when I churned up with those same wolves, only to watch one, then the other be dismissed until I was alone. I need to display the same confidence I'd felt back then, to simply keep the last hour wiped from my mind. My confident stride falters when I see Amicus, though, standing right there in the main hallway. His presence is always intimidating. He is the Emperor, after all. But right now he looks especially imposing because he's angry.
What in the hell were you thinking?
More than angry. I've seen him angry before. This is fury. But he's not looking at me. In fact, if I'm not even present, his gaze reserved only for the jackal beside me. This is good, actually. Neferu's smug nature returns. I have to admit that it impresses me a little bit. Even if he's the Pharaoh's son, he's still a lone jackal within the palace with an enraged wolf and emperor. Amicus raises a paw as if to stop the jackal physically.
No, Neferu. I'm not playing your stupid games tonight. This goes beyond.
The Emperor seems to remember himself and takes a deep breath, though the smouldering fury continues to burn in his eyes.
You'll realise how serious this is, what could have happened.
I realise this, yes. I was there.
Then what the fuck were you doing in the Clay District?
I jump, never having heard Amicus shout like that, or curse in such a manner for that matter.
Carelessly showing your face, no appointments, no protection.
Oh, they offer protection there. The Pharaoh's joke falls terribly flat. Amicus lets it hang there in the air, seems to emphasise the stupidity of even saying it.
You know, I almost felt guilty assigning a drone to tell you covertly. What if you'd been killed? Thought you were at least somewhat sensible,
Amicus's muzzle hangs open for a moment, as if trying to search for words appropriate enough to describe his disbelief and anger. Even through my numbed senses, I'm able to feel some shame and embarrassment, not only for myself, but Neferu as well. What had we been thinking? We knew the separatist movement's been gaining a bit more momentum recently, become more radical. We discussed the possibility of things becoming more dangerous. While I might not matter in the grand scheme of this mission, losing Neferu would end the mission. Might even start a war. That's exactly what the separatists want, after all. I suppose I'd simply assumed Neferu knew the risks, knew what he was doing. I hadn't even bothered to ask. I look at him and see that he has his ears back, eyes downcast, or they flick in my direction, instinctively causing me to lower my gaze. Amicus's anger seems to lose its edge, his demeanour shrinking a bit as he waits for Neferu to respond. When the jackal offers nothing, Amicus spreads his paws in a gesture of bewilderment.
I mean, you're not some frolicking first-year student needing a private room for fornication, are you? I sent you over the best living quarters in the Imperial District.
It's a long walk, and I was tired, Amicus.
What? You...
Again, the Emperor is at a loss for words, anger steadily replaced with disbelief, while I silently beg Neferu to just be a little serious. An assessment of the current situation indicates they have information that may be of use to you, Amicus.
What about the assassin?
About Neferu's living accommodations.
Oh, shut up, Com. What is it?
The magistrate of the Imperial District ordered the apartment to be renovated and thus evicted Neferu.
What? I was not notified of this.
According to Adastran Code 3304 under housing, Magistrate Anthony was fully within his rights to do so without notifying you, Amicus.
Then where the hell have you been living, Neferu?
The jackal opens his mouth, but is interrupted by Com once again. He's been renting various temporary living spaces, mainly within the Silk and Clay districts. I have logged the addresses of each location if you'd like to.
Oh, shut the hell up for once, Com! The point has been made.
If all you do is spy, then you should learn to read a room. That word again. Read a room does not compute, Neferu.
Oh, we know, Com. Neferu, why did you not tell me of this?
Amicus looks less angry now, more confused. Neferu sighs. You are the Emperor of Adastra. You have larger issues to worry about than me getting kicked out of my place of residence because of Wolven's spite.
What if it endangers your life? The Pharaoh, even the Vizier, knew of your slinking around the worst districts of Adastra City. All our efforts over the past 4 years could be ended within seconds.
Why are you so sure of that? You seem to think they care about me.
I said none of your games tonight. I know your relationship with your father is a poor one, but frankly that matters little to me. What does matter is the optics. Imagine the son of the Khemian Pharaoh being murdered on the poorest streets of Adastra. Imagine it! Like it or not, you are my responsibility while you are here, as you are a diplomatic guest. So my inability to, at the very least, keep you alive would demand an answer from Khemia and set back all of our work by years, if not generations.
That finally seems to get through to the jackal, and he does not respond this time. A very uncomfortable silence follows. Then the jackal bows with a quick duck of his head. You are right, Amicus. I suppose I have become too comfortable on this moon. I apologize for my negligence. The Pharaoh then turns to me. And I apologize to you, Scipio. I had no intention of endangering your mission, but more importantly, your life. For whatever reason, the possibility didn't even cross my mind. Forgive me. He catches me a bit off guard, but I manage to keep my composure. You have my forgiveness, Neferu. Then, realizing Amicus's eyes are now on me, I quickly turn to him. I am adjusting and learning about this new position I'm in. Still, I should have known such actions were reckless. I am sorry, my Emperor. I kneel before Amicus, holding my breath, the same time hearing the Pharaoh exhale. A gentle sigh as if seeing me do such a thing bothers him. I don't care, though. This is the moment to prepare myself for dismissal, from both the palace and my position. The Pharaoh's paw comes to rest on my shoulder in a somewhat supportive way. Amicus rubs his face with the paw tiredly, sighing loudly.
Oh, get up, Scipio. If anyone is kneeling, it should be the Pharaoh.
Amicus glares back at the jackal as I get to my feet, swaying slightly, dizzy for some reason.
You must be thankful that Virginia is not aware of this.
Amicus, you should know the report on the incident has been filed for Virginia upon her awakening.
Delete that, com.
Delete a report on the assassination attempt upon the lives of Neferu and Scipio for Virginia.
Gods, I have such a mess to clean up now. Who else knows what happened?
The owner of the establishment and possibly a few housekeepers.
Come, guard the entrance to that den. Ensure that no one leaves the premises until I arrive.
Amicus walks past us and hear the deep rumble of a stifled growl in his throat before he calls over his shoulder.
Neferu, you'll take up residence in the palace once more. Have your belongings moved here from wherever the hell you're staying now.
Oh, wonderful.
In fact, Com, Lord Terrace and Brunies will both be moving residence behind the palace walls first thing in the morning. We cannot afford mistakes at this point.
Yes, Amicus. And where shall I bed for the night, Amicus? Amicus is almost past the archway.
Same room as last time. It should be the same as you left it.
Oh, really? I thought that room was for the Emperor. But Amicus disappears around the corner, a small parade of drones following him. The Pharaoh goes quiet, sighing deeply. Then he rubs the back of his neck, glancing at me. Does this mean I take the sofa? I gesture at one of the velvet couches, only partially joking as I'm not sure I'm supposed to stay. Still, I'm relieved as I'm such an afterthought in Amicus's mind, at least for now. Oh, if you'd like. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use them. I believe, however, that Amicus was implying that we share the room. What makes you believe that? There are 2 beds in that room, if it has stayed the way I remember. I see. So maybe I'm not such an afterthought. I wonder if Amicus still has our relationship in mind, even though such things seem much less important to me right now. Think about my small room on campus, the one I had been moved to 2 years ago, the place I desperately wish to be right now. Being in a private room amongst the faculty, I don't have to mingle with the students in the dorms. Not that I'd have to anyway, consider it's mostly empty for the summer. While I'd like to be alone, I'm not so sure if there's security there robust enough to deal with assassination attempts. I don't know if Amicus has a drone tailing me as well. Probably not. So, do you wish to speak about what happened, or... In all honesty, I wish to have a long bath. I'm becoming aware of the smell again, now that I'm no longer distracted by the Emperor. I'll take that as a no. Follow me. I frown a bit as I follow the jackal. Why would he just expect me to open up? I remember myself, he's a Khemian, and I should be adapting to what they expect from a friendship. Just I'd rather my issues not be the topic he's so interested in. We walk in silence through the marble halls, and soon cross into sections I'm not familiar with. The last time I visited the palace, I'd been a bit too preoccupied to really take in my surroundings. Now I'm able to see that it's rather empty, almost utilitarian in its design. One would think the halls be embroidered with gold and encrusted with precious stones, if they only listened to the rumours spread by the lower classes. We come to a stop at what appears to be a door without a handle, and the fairy automatically raises the paw to a black square, which sends the door sliding open at startling speed. Now that is a bit fanciful, I have to admit. What's even more fanciful is a giant bath, the same size as the public one in the university, maybe even bigger. The university's bath is almost always filled with dozens of men. This one is completely empty. Instead of the sulphuric smell I'm used to, I'm instead hit with a warm, steamy wall of floral scents. You help yourself. A drones will clear up after you. I step in hesitantly, then notice Neferu hanging back. Don't you need to wash as well? There's a personal bath in the room. Beside that, I feel you need more. Neferu makes vague, waving motions with his paws. A wide open space to ease your mind. What you experienced was a terrible thing, and I know it has affected you. I bristle. For that moment, yes, but I've had time to collect myself. Well, take the time to collect yourself further. When you're finished, ask for directions to where I am. Con will direct you. Neferu steps out, leaving me frowning once again at his abrupt nature. Or is it just rudeness? I'd used a firm tone, wrong to hint I didn't want to talk about it. My wolven friends would have understood. I found myself agreeing more with what Viteris said about casual retrials. The possibility that this casual relationship would be more difficult to maintain than the word would indicate. I have to admit, the more I get to know him, the more odd he seems. Maybe I misjudged our relationship, and Neferu himself, but I can't worry about that now. He's under stress as well, possibly more than me, so I'll ignore it for now. Not to mention slightly drunk, having forgotten about the wine he drank earlier. Still, the more I think of it, the more upset I become, especially after going through something terrible as essentially due to his negligence. I begin undressing, deciding to be faster with my own tongue when I speak to him in the future. Neferu thinks himself to be more clever than he really is. That much is clear about him. Maybe next time I show him it's not difficult to speak fast while also being rude. Not for me, anyway. I simply yield to higher authority, and being an assistant to the scholar on the mission, well, that means I yield to most everyone here. Neferu, however, insists we speak as equals. If most of my assignment involves needing to learn more about him, then I must do that. I suck air through my teeth as I clip into the water, a bit surprised at how much hotter it is than the university bath. I usually lower myself slowly, but it's painful enough that as my groin nears the steaming water, I just drop in all at once. Ah! I groan in equal parts pain and pleasure for dunking my head into the scented water. I come back up, tasting the salty minerals, leaving me to wonder how they've kept the smell so pleasant. Maybe it's completely artificial. A far cry from the natural springs back in Lux. I don't mind. Already feeling better, shivering down my spine a few times as I imagine the remnants of the night washing off and floating away from my body. I submerge myself a few more times before finally settling back, sighing deeply. I'm finally able to relax, almost aching from the tension of having such important eyes on me the entire day. And from the terror of the past hour, the reminder making my chest feel hollow and my head feel light. Has it only been that long? So far, Neferu hasn't shown any indication he intends to tell anyone else about how he saw me react. Still, that frosty look on his face when he left just now. Though I had been reluctant to share my experience with the jackal, I now think it would be wise to open up to him a bit. He'd seen my reaction and questioned it, and seemed offended by my unwillingness to share. I decided to try to achieve some understanding, just in case he goes elsewhere for answers. During the psychological portion of the vetting process, my position had almost crumbled multiple times. I doubt I'd be able to do it again in my current state. And maybe they chose the wrong wolf. It will be difficult confessing my mental weaknesses to someone who isn't my mindfulness teacher or my mother. My eyes fly open as I realize I've forgotten to send my daily message to her. Damn it, Com?
Yes, Scipio?
Do you have a portal here I can use?
I'm sorry, I cannot allow you to use technology reserved for the Imperial family.
I sigh. What if I have to ask Neferu to borrow his?
However, your personal portal is due to arrive within the minute, along with the rest of your belongings. Would you like me to send it to you in the baths?
Yes, please. I quickly stand to soap up, scrubbing, then rinsing my fur, careful to really get the spots that felt hard and bristled. I dry my fur in a hurry, as I'm dressed in a tiny drone floats down from an opening in the ceiling, balancing a silver rod about the length of my forearm on its top. I pluck my portal from the floating machine in a delicate manner, now very aware of what they're capable of in combat.
Thank you,
I mumble quietly, but immediately floats away back to its ceiling hatch. I quickly tap it to extend the transparent glowing panel from the rod. I feel my heart leap in my chest when I see it have a message waiting for me from Mother. I'd hoped that maybe she hadn't been up yet, even though Lux is several hours ahead of Adastra. She's always up before Vito rises. I open it and read the small message.
Scipio, I hope you're well. Did you fall asleep early? I imagine it must be working you quite hard. Please respond when you can. All my love. Mother.
It was sent around the time I'd been asleep, before it happened. What if I hadn't survived and never sent her a final message with my forgetfulness? I start to tap a message back, a quick one, but I notice the icon in the corner. Visual communication is what truly makes this device a portal. We only use it once weekly, but that day is 2 days away, because I miss sending my message on time because I miss Mother. I push the icon resembling an arrowhead, as if pointing in the direction of where she is, thousands of kilometres away. She answers within seconds, and at first all I see is white fabric, then a bracelet, then my mother's face.
Skip, are you all right? You fell asleep, didn't you?
She doesn't sound too worried or upset, but her chiding voice makes it difficult to speak for some reason. If I'd be completely honest, I give up my mission just to be with her again, be in the warmth of our villa, with the smell of Oliban thick in the air.
Scipio, you're all right, aren't you? Have you just had a bath? Your mane is sticking up all over. I wish these were actual portals. I'd reach through and fix it right now.
The fortress inside my mind I'd thought I'd rebuilt comes crumbling down. I open my mouth, but all that comes out is a sob as the tears well up and soak into the fur on my cheeks. When I arrive at Neferu's room, I find him already asleep on the bed. It's certainly much more exotic than the rest of the palace, but it being the Emperor's room, that makes sense. I see a few crates stacked in one corner of the room, which I assume to be our belongings. I'm too tired to look through them now, though, however, and find myself slumping into the smaller bed. Even if it is smaller, it's quite a bit more comfortable than any bed I've slept on. Within less than a minute, the babbling fountain behind me lulls me into a deep sleep. The dreams that follow are intense, long and vivid. I watch as the assassin raises his knife, and this time I can see his face, grinning with delight. He's got a glassy look in his eyes, his expression looking almost fake, and I get the unnerving feeling he's not alive, even now. But then I see the drone just behind him, and I realise the angle. Before I can yell, to warn it that I'm in its path, it fires. At first I feel the wave, the warping of space that ripples through my mortal flesh. Nothing I've experienced in my life could have prepared me for the pain. Wonder how it's possible to feel so much pain for so long, even though it seemed instantaneous when it happened to the other wolf. I've been killed with him this time, and terror grips me, not of the pain, but of death. A whisper of 1,000 dead leaves rattles around me.
As you should be. Death is a terrible, terrible thing.
I hear screaming, but it can't be me as I die and feel everything rip apart. But the voice must be lying, because death shouldn't be terrible. It should be a release, a calm eternity after the chaos of life. It's okay. I'm going to the amalgamation, where we're all meant to be in the end. This is okay. This is natural. This is normal.
The amalgamation is nothing but an ocean of suffering. Even you know that it's unnatural, Scipio.
The voice of rattling dried leaves, the one I heard in university earlier, terrifies me to my very core. The worries and doubts I'd harboured for the past decade been warranted? No, Scipio, it's far, far worse than that. Then, somehow still aware, I feel myself pulled down, down, down. I'm joining the amalgamation, but all I hear is screams and howls and cries. This is more like the afterlife that wolves imagined before full parental contact. They'd been right. They're suffering, and so am I. The pain, mental and physical, is as fresh as ever. No reprieve, no relief, and now my pain melds with the countless souls around me, our suffering seeming to drown us. I'd thought the pain of death was bad. This is a new level, having to feel the agony of everyone who came before me. No, my assignment. I can't die now. But I realise that I am dead, and that my mission doesn't matter in the least bit right now. If this is forever, then it doesn't matter that I'm at the start. The beginning might as well be the end, because this is eternity, and that thought alone is going to drive me mad. I lose track of time almost immediately, and now I have no idea how long it's been. At least hours. But Scipio, it's only been minutes. See how quickly it breaks you. Mother? I beg without a mouth or voice for a comfort, for her to save me like I'm truly a pup. She will join you in due time, Scipio. But how will you ever find her amongst the billions? But at least your suffering will become one with hers. No, please, no. Unless... Unless what? Tell me. I'm begging now. I'll do anything at this point. And suddenly I'm rising now, as if being pulled from the depths of the deepest sea made of suffocating fire. There are other possibilities, Scipio. Anything but this. We know what you truly want and what you deserve. To become useful, fulfill your duties, and then die. Naturally, with all the pain dying with you. Of course. Useful. The next voice to come through is a stark contrast to the rattling voices from earlier. Instead, it's high, clear, and female. Scipio. Hey, don't listen to that. You'll get answers and help very soon. But right now, you just need to wake up. This is a dream. I've heard the voice before, and I hear a grumbling like a discontented growl. I remember for just a moment those two voices I heard on the bench. Then it finally ends. I sit on the stone ledge surrounding the pond, letting my feet cool in the water. I was only a little confused when I woke up in the palace, but very quickly remembered what happened the night before. It's somewhat easy to think back on now. I start to try and process it, something I should do according to my mindfulness teachings. Still, there's an odd dreamy quality to what I see, almost like a filter exists between me and the world. It's a familiar, numbing feeling. I sit there in front of the fountain, feeling as if I'm staring through a fog I cannot see. This happened last time as well, though it's not as prevalent. Shortly after the riots, I've seen everything as if it were one of the stories broadcast on the entertainment channels. A tragic story, but one that at least didn't feel real. A defense mechanism, my mindfulness teacher had called it. Back then I had trouble telling the difference between dreams and being awake, just how last night had felt. My actual dreams have been so emotionally exhausting that I'm still feeling hollow. This despite the fact I had forgotten most of the details upon waking, aside from suffering an imagined amalgamation. Not an uncommon nightmare, but much more intense, which isn't surprising after last night. I left Neferu still sleeping in the bedroom, secretly hoping he might seek me out, and I'm relieved when he does. Tells me he's at least still interested in me, which I remind myself is something I need to foster. I won't serve in Adastra right now. I'd go back home, the outskirts of Lux, and hug my mother longer than I ever had before. The thought brings emotions up that I need to tamp down, so I swallow, as if I'm swallowing those feelings of weakness. Meanwhile, Neferu almost stumbles and almost trips on his way over, looking a bit more unkempt than usual, squinting in the bright light. Getting some fresh air? Oh, I just needed... I waved my paws around, mimicking his own gestures from last night. Space. I apologise for my behaviour last night. It is unfair. I wave away the apology, not wanting to take me seriously. I'm teasing you, Neff. The jackal seemed to loosen up a bit as I used his shortened name, something I've never done before. Oh, still, it was insensitive and cruel. Sometimes I let my emotions get the better of me. It's all right. Are Khemians not known to be blunt? It was insensitive even by Khemian standards, but if space is what you like, I think you'll really enjoy the deserts of Khemia. The transition is just abrupt enough I'm caught a bit off guard by it. I have to recenter my thoughts. You know, I come from a region of Adastra that is a desert. Yes, but no one on Adastra is like the deserts of Khemia. Yeah, countless dunes, right? Oh, among other things, but yes, many dunes. The desert I come from is a tundra, so I've never really seen those. Lux, correct? Oh, I've been there before. My foe was no match for the cold. I look at him, genuinely surprised. Lux isn't usually a place people just go to, especially Khemian. Lux? I'm surprised. I mean, I'm still proud of my city becoming what it is despite the hurdles, but it's notoriously anti-Khemian. Neferu shrugs. Oh, when a city or entire world is having those hardships, it's usually not the fault of those who live there. They call it the city of rebellion, but what I saw is more like the city of isolation. I'm surprised by his insight, and even more so by what he says next. Is that why you're here? Were you driven to look for something more? In a way. A frozen tundra can leave one wanting for more, even if it does have the best hot springs on the moon. If I'm being honest, I hate Lux more than I love it. I feel that saying so along with the reasons is not compatible with the Khemian mindset. Those hot springs are divine, though. Adastron hot baths are one of the most pleasurable aspects of your culture. I don't understand why Khemia hasn't implemented them in every population centre yet. Possibly because Khemia does not wish to admit they borrowed any culture from Adastra. I'm half serious, but I understand that Adastra's influence is the weakest amongst all the siblings. It was a confusing experience being a student of Khemian culture, admiring its capabilities while conscious of our own inferiority. I think back to my primary schooling, how I'd go to the library and obsessively examine the educational murals of Khemia, the sprawling dunes below illuminated by the bright moon above. Meanwhile, the jackals danced in the moonlight. That was probably the beginning of my obsession with Khemia, and Neferu reminded me I might be able to go. It penetrates through my numbed fog, and I feel some excitement, but also apprehension, so I know I need to talk to Neferu about last night if I'm ever going to rest easy. I'm sure of my face. What's wrong? Can I speak to you for a moment about something I'd like to keep private between us? Neferu walks closer to the edge of the pond. Well, it depends on what that something is. Promising to keep a secret before knowing. Oh, Tep! I jump too, bringing my paws up to be at the ready. What? I look back at the jackal as he stumbles back, staring with wide eyes at the ground beside me. I look down, finding nothing but stone and a garden spider. I look back up at him, my heart hammering to bits in my chest, trying to fight off a familiar wave of rising panic. What is it, Neferu? If he's playing games with me in my current state, I don't think I'd be able to forgive him. But now he's shuddering, looking angry. God damn your 8 eyes! It's every time in this awful garden! I look at the spider, motionless, legs fanned out to touch either side of the pond's stone border. Are you speaking to a spider, Neferu? And how the hell do you sit next to it? It's disgusting. I sit there, confused, completely thrown off by this sudden, intense, even violent reaction from Neferu. What's wrong with it? Everything. I start to smile a little. Are you afraid of it, Neferu? You know that the venom is hardly... I know. Many of you wolves remind me of this. It doesn't change the fact they're an abomination. I look back down the creature, frowning before poking one of my blunt claws to the very back of its abdomen. Like lightning, it skitters away, across the stone slabs of the ground and toward a pillar. Neferu's body is tense and he decides it's moved far enough away. They're the most natural and effective form of pest control. You know, back when I was a pup, I'd catch them to keep as pets. Neferu watches the spider warily for approaching the edge of the pond, looking around closely before finally sitting next to me. Cultural differences, I suppose. I think back to my studies of Khemian wildlife, the many dangerous and extremely venomous creatures that prowl through the sands. A spider's dangerous on Khemia. I know that arachnids can pose a threat. Scorpions, I think they're called. The creatures with those incredible curved, stinging tails. Neferu dips his feet into the water with a sigh. Incredibly painful stinging tails. Even on this planet I shake up my clothing and bedding before using them. It became a habit after an incident with one of my loincloths during my youth. I'd only say they could not sit properly for several days. Otherwise, our largest spiders are tarantulas, which are somehow much easier to look at than... The jackal shudders again, and this time I keep a straight face. What are basically true spiders, only 10 times the size they have any right to be. You have aggressive arachnids on your planet, and I feel your fear is completely reasonable. I have a very strong fear of the types of people that live in the clay district. Snakes. In fact, I believe my reaction would have been worse than yours just now. Well, I believe that fear is more rational. I'm glad to know a wolf who is more understanding. Now, you want to confide in me about something. Our light-hearted conversation is about to become heavy once more, and I sigh, wondering how best to word what I've decided to reveal. A quick word, I think. Over the past year, I've come to very much enjoy your company, Neferu, especially over the past few weeks. I feel that we are becoming true friends. Neferu understands wolven friendship, so just to make sure it's clear, I add, wolven friends. I know we're already friends by Khemian standards, just as you were friends with Marcus and Carbo. What can I say? You make great conversation. If my interpretations are correct, I believe that I feel the same way. Thank you. But because of that, I feel I should tell you some things about myself that could be important. So, I want to explain what happened last night. I see. Then I will let you speak without interruption. Well, there's not much to say. Simply that I had a terrible experience 3 years ago during Cato's riots. You may be aware they targeted the university among other institutions. They stormed our dormitories and attacked students and faculty. I was one of the unfortunate ones to be caught, likely due to my more obvious mane, and I was humiliated in various ways. I look at Neferu's reflection. He looks back at me, his expression attentive but stoic. What I experienced was mild compared to others, perhaps even merciful, because I am still alive. I think my issue is that I witnessed many of these terrible things. This all left an impression on my mind, this sort of... I furrow my brow, trying to think of the right words to describe it. Like an ache, but in my mind, one that I've mostly been able to overcome. But the events of the den last night, it irritated that ache a bit. I'd been somewhat lucky that my spectacles had been knocked off and broken. Even the happenings beyond my immediate vicinity a literal blur had been enough. The reaction you saw from me is connected to this. Being awoken suddenly in the unfamiliar den and then witnessing what happened, I was unprepared. But I am prepared now. I doubt the ache will return like it did. I just wanted to explain it to you as a friend, though it is something I only tell friends, so I hope you can keep it between us. I wait for a moment, somewhat satisfied with my tactics in explaining this to him. He stays quiet. Anxiety knots up in a place just below my diaphragm. I look up at Neferu, though he's still gazing into the water. I hope I was able to make sense. I am not insane. I understand what is happening shortly after those moments, and it's only happened a few times this past year. More silence. and I can face moments of extreme stress when I am prepared, and I can guarantee that I'll always be prepared during our mission. This isn't bad enough. My words waver towards the end, feeling my heart begin to sink. Damn it. I should have known. Why had I been this naive? Neferu is a Khemian. They're known for many things, one of them being efficient, so I keep something that is inefficient. That is what I am. I'm being selfish. Wolven pride prevented me from admitting to it, trying to stay on the mission for my own personal reasons. I suppose you're upset with me? I mumbled dejectedly, feeling myself wanting to cry. Feels unusually easy to do now after sobbing to my mother last night. Neferu finally looks at me. Scipio. Yes? I keep my voice light and attentive. I am upset, but not with you. I am frustrated with many things. I suppose I'm upset with Adastra as a whole. Jackal's voice is heavy and distant. Adastra? You already know this, but the catalyst of those riots involved me to an extent. Of course I do, but I'm still surprised he's addressing it so directly. I'd seen imagery of Neferu being prepared for execution by Cato shortly after the riots, but I never delved into it, to any part of the riots, because why would I? No one has spoken about it, on the 2 years I've been involved in the mission. And why would we? I clear my throat. I do know, yes. When I was kneeling in the amphitheatre, certain my life was about to end, I was at peace. In fact, you might even say that I was willing to die, especially at that time. I had reasoned it was an easy purpose and a quick path to redemption. Neferu trails his paw through the water. But then I was saved by a friend. Shortly afterwards, I witnessed his neck being slashed instead. At the moment he was leaning against me, I saw his neck in detail. I then witnessed his final moments with his lover. I continued to listen, attentive despite knowing the story. The human sacrifice saved Amicus's rule in Neferu's life. I would have thought it was an intensely joyous moment for the jackal. He is very brave. Neferu was quiet for a moment, still playing with the water. Yes, though he denied and tell you he simply never knows what he's doing, and only goes with the flow or something along those lines. Luxian phrase, use the river, comes to mind. A simple concept, but its literal meaning, to see the rivers around us as tools rather than obstacles, help the community survive and rise to the prominence of a triumvirate city. I tell you this because that experience changed something within me. I don't believe that I ever feared death until that moment, when it happened right before my eyes. For the first time, I watched a sapient, a friend, transition from existence to nothing. Nothing but an empty, damaged vessel cradled in his lover's arms. Now I think I understand. Memory serves that bright blue sky day slowly turned to a reddish haze as clouds of glowing orange towered over the city, and a Professor Urbicus lying on his back in the street next to me as I played dead. I watched his fitful death throes, his last sporadic movements as his damaged brain struggled to continue its existence, before it finally failed. He'd been trying to defend me, telling them to leave the students be, and so they turned their attention to him. His long accomplished life had him serve under 3 different emperors, for he dedicated the remainder of that life to instilling the art of rhetoric into the youth. And despite all of that, he'd used his last words to save me. My mind begins clouding slightly, and Neferu notices. Sorry, are you all right? I clear my mind by focusing back on the present. Yes. I could have handled that more delicately, but my point is this. We shared a terrible moment 3 years ago, and while our experiences likely cannot be compared, it is a moment that affects us deeply this very day. He pauses. Excuse my Khemian ways, but... Neferu's arm is suddenly around my shoulders, pulling me in towards him until my muzzle is right next to his, and he rests his head against mine. I freeze up slightly, unused to physical contact like this unless it's one of carnal intimacy. Ahewawi. I hear Neferu's voice unfiltered by my lingua for the first time, and of course he speaks perfect, beautiful Khemian. That is our word for it, old pain. I know that it's not in Adastrian vocabulary, which makes this all the more frustrating. Here you are expected to face inner turmoil alone. This is what upsets me. I recall that physical closeness between friends is common on Khemia, the point that the wolf might have trouble distinguishing between friends and lovers. I relax a bit, then lean into Neferu more, partially because I'm happy to be part of anything Khemian, also because this is actually comforting. I understand what Neferu is telling me now. But I never expected this, the son of the pharaoh to struggle with Ahewawi like I do. That word stirs something deep in my memory, and I try to think why. The pharaoh gently pulls back. So I understand you don't have to hide your struggles from me. I would rather help you manage them. I'm still feeling the relief of Neferu's acceptance, and for a moment I forget my mission. No one I can confide in a friend, someone other than just my mother, but I worry that I'll be dismissed from the mission if it interferes with my duties. Everyone else seems to have moved past this moment. Because my mind seems to sometimes temporarily malfunction against my will. Suddenly I've just laid bare my deepest fears, the very jackal that I am supposed to decode. I realise that I must be Adastra's worst spy, and the always suspicious part of my mind wonders if I'm being purposely manipulated. I dismiss the thought almost as quickly as it forms, knowing that it'll be gained from me, the scholar's assistant. Not only that, but it feels genuine. I've always admired Khemian culture, but for the first time I feel as if I'm being included in it. It's wonderful. Oh, I know. Also, you should know there are likely many, many others like you. They simply hide it well, just as you do. And while I would have advised you to resign for your own health, Khemia is much more stable. The pharaoh leans back on both paws, relaxed again as usual impish nature returns. On the contrary, I believe going to Khemia might help you, especially if you're only there to record and experience the culture, as you said. Well, thank you, Neferu, for giving me this Khemian experience. It's refreshing to say what I'm thinking. Liberating, isn't it? Keep practicing, you'll fit right in once we arrive on Khemia. That's where I remember that I've heard Ahewawi before. As I'm pondering this, we're interrupted.
Why don't you practice on me? I like some blunt answers right about now.
Runus's deep rumbling voice startled me out of my thoughts. We both turned to see the big wolverine standing about 10 paces behind us. What creature so large managed to get so close that my noticing is beyond me. Morning, Brutus. Decided to join the Palace Club?
Yeah, well, I was escorted by a bunch of drones. I didn't exactly have a choice.
Oh, someone's a bit testy this morning.
Someone's about to explain to me what the hell they did last night.
My ears fall flat and I look away.
And not you, Skip. I already know that what happened is his fault.
The pharaoh smirks in response. If you want details, you'll have to accept my invitations one of these days. I tend to have a looser tongue during pillow talk.
Don't take it the wrong way, but I'm really damn curious as to why I've been kicked in the balls more than once on this moon.
That seems to quickly sour Neferu's mood. Because, Brutus, video recording devices are a luxury on Adastra.
So you have been? Good, you deserved it.
The wolverine turns to look at me.
So I don't think it's your fault. Maybe you can tell me what's happened, so we're not all wasting our breath.
At this point, the pharaoh steps in. Someone attempted to attack us, likely from one of the separatist groups. It's under investigation. The immediate situation was taken care of, but Amicus is taking extra precautions to make sure we're unharmed until we depart for Khemia.
An attack? What, they do a crappy sort of attack or try to kill you sort of attack?
The latter, but I will tell you the details later. For now, just enjoy the rare opportunity of being able to reside in the Grand Adastrian Imperial Palace.
What?
Brunus seems to take Neferu's hint and manages to stifle the reaction that would have followed.
Well, as long as the two of you are okay. Honestly, this place gives me the creeps. I've only seen footage of this place when Cato tried to murder you. That and the fact they've only got drones around you. I'm especially on edge because all my stuff got spirited away on a bunch of drones, so who the hell knows where. My medicine went with it. I've been able to refill it for a whole day now.
The big wolverine manipulates the pipe in his mouth. The one that emanates the herbal smell I recognise him for, before he sucks on it comically hard, his cheeks hollowing out. I clear my throat. Com? There's a momentary pause in which both Neferu and Brunus look at me. I wonder if I've made a fool of myself trying to communicate with the Imperial computer while outside. Thankfully, though. Yes, Scipio? Can you locate Brunus's belongings? You were flying them in by drone. They have been deposited on the roof.
What?
I have information regarding the situation that may be of note. Brunus's luggage contained an illegal preparation of the Khemian plant Ahewawi to be vaporized in a pipe contraption.
What?
It was properly disposed of via incineration, and a report has been filed and sent to Amicus, suggesting a 100-year prison sentence for Brunus.
What?
Neferu talks over the angry growls coming from the Wolverine. Oh, why was it dropped on the roof, Com? To follow cargo loading protocol, all members of the Khemian envoy have had their personal belongings moved to the roof. Cargo loading?
We are not leaving you until I get my damn pap. Rather rip off my one arm now to go through the stretcher without my medicine.
Just a moment, does that mean the ship has arrived? I'm answered by someone I didn't even know was in the gardens with us.
It's here!
I know it's Viteris. I haven't heard his overexcitement before, but his normally reedy voice is especially high and harsh now. We all look around in confusion and then...
Holy shit, where'd you come from?
The ship has entered the atmosphere. Viteris' manic demeanour seems to disturb my two friends, which is understandable considering I've never seen him in such a state. It even surprises me a bit, but it's understandable considering this is the beginning of he and I seeing large, state-funded Khemian tech in person for the first time. How far away is the ship, Com? Arrival in approximately 2 minutes and 32 seconds.
Scipio!
I'm a bit distracted, trying to think of anything else I might need to do here on the asteroid for I'll be apart for at least several months. Longer if all goes well. Already gone over my checklist more times than I can count, but I always feel as if I'm missing something. Viteris is adamant on getting my attention though, leaving in front of me.
Scipio, my boy.
His voice has transitioned to a hoarse whisper.
Remember this moment. Cherish this moment.
Then he yanks me down to a kneeling position before grabbing my head rather roughly and tilting it towards the sky.
Behold, your first view of Khemian tech. Let it inspire you, Scipio. It is what a Dastra can be.
For some reason, as the ship arrives, I'm not fully struck by its significance. He descends in a quiet, controlled manner as the sun gleams off the metal. I think at first they maybe just sent a parental-built one instead. It doesn't seem too different from Adastran ships gifted to us by the Roana's parents. It's a bit more smooth in its architecture. It's definitely larger than I'd seen before. But simply that, a different version of what I'd seen in the past. However, as we wait on the roof during takeoff preparations, I finally realise what I'm seeing. This isn't parental tech. This actually is Khemian tech. I'm not sure I'd have been expecting. Likely something loud and powerful like the Amorvan ships I'd seen. And unlike many of the Adastran ships that fly through the air above the capital, it was not simply gifted by the parents. This was built by the Khemians themselves. By engineers not only knowledgeable in how to fix ship components when they wore out or malfunctioned, but also in how to actually build them. Oh, and taking that into consideration, it is certainly impressive. More than that, it's almost inconceivable. I've known this to be the case in studying Khemian history and culture, for to not be able to tell the difference between their own technology and the parents is stunning. It even frightens me a bit as I climb aboard the Sibling-built craft, as it appears more comfortable, perhaps even more stable than machinery built by the parents. This sense of awe and reverence comes to an abrupt end, however, as we board the ship and walk to the corridor, just when I happen to peer out the window. I'm looking out over the lake, a pleasant view before the palace, well, before everything flies away. It happens so fast I go from seeing the Imperial Gardens, seeing what I realize is the entirety of the moon, over the course of just a few seconds. The suddenness of it all and the odd sensation of seeing such a movement, yet feeling none of it, makes my stomach turn. My body leans forward, balance teetering as if wanting to fall out the window, and I force myself upright before the others might notice. Luckily, Amicus and Viteris are looking out the window instead, seemingly unbothered by the sight. My sudden lurch gets the attention of who was behind me, though, and Neferu gently holds onto my elbow. Are you alright? There usually aren't windows on the few transport ships I've been on in the past, but now I can see. It's almost like when I would go sailing with friends on the ocean, the terrible, all-consuming seasickness that came with it. This is all at once, though. Fine. I'm fine.
You don't look fine.
The big wolverine sidles up next to Neferu, looks at me closely, which makes me draw back. Then the stars bend in the most queasy way imaginable, and I stumble to the side again. I feel my pulse begin to pound in my ears, panicking at the way I seem to be losing control of my body, at the same time fearing I might lose control of my stomach as well. You are most certainly not fine. Or is this your first time in the stretch?
Well, of course it is, Neff. How do you think?
Neferu's moving me away from the window, already looking away, horrified. Not by the stretch, but because of the feeling growing inside me. I'm going to vomit, in front of everyone. Somehow Amicus and Neferu have continued on their way, deep in conversation I vaguely feel I should be listening to. But I'll have to wait. Fine, just wondering where a lavatory might be. My voice is slightly louder than it should be, although Amicus's deep resonant voice seems to cover it up, so I can hear him rumbling on as Neferu guides me down another corridor of the ship.
We're moving rather fast. I can barely distinguish the stars.
Of course, the Khemians have had to drive better than one the parents lent us.
How is this possible?
Amicus echoes my own thoughts, so that will be at the forefront of my mind if not for the situation I'm in. I allow myself to be pushed along until we reach a door that opens automatically, without any panels being touched. This here's the living quarters. I'm not sure you'll be bunking, but we'll be sharing the toilet. We move towards an even smaller door, one that does require the push of a panel. Considering the journey's only about 12 hours, it should be somewhat tolerable, I think. Do you need an anti-nausea medication?
Too late for that.
They kick in within minutes.
Still too late.
Neferu makes it to follow me to the lavatory, probably wanting to help like last time, but I hold up a paw. I'm fine, just... My stomach heaves and I fear its contents are about to spew on Neferu. I'll be right back. I quickly move into the little room, leaving a perturbed Neferu behind as I furiously stab at the panel inside the lavatory till the door slides shut. I stand over the toilet for several seconds, vaguely thinking to myself that it's quite similar to the ones on the Dastro. I suppose that some things are universal in design, and then what's in my stomach comes out. I'm in the lavatory for a little while, maybe about 10 minutes, partially to collect myself, but mostly because I'm embarrassed and I just hope Neferu's moved on for now. Still, at least I'd managed not to be sick in the corridor like my stomach wanted to be. I'm running my paws under the faucet, cleaning myself up before the stream of water suddenly stops, and an unfamiliar voice rings in my head. Scipio? I yelp out loud. Apologies. Pour washing water limit has been reached. I stand there staring at my own reflection in the mirror, deciding what I'd heard came from within my head. But how? I begin to panic slightly, for I realise that, like with some parental tech I'd interacted with, must be from my lingua. So I respond. Yes? Who is this? I get an immediate answer in return. I am Arm, the state-sponsored computer assistant of Khemia. Oh, yes, I know of you. I've studied... I trail off, reminding myself it's a computer and does not care about what I've studied or about anything at all. You have studied me? The computer asks in a slightly curious tone after a polite pause. This is very odd. It's odd they're speaking directly into my lingua. Com never did that, and I doubt he can. But something else is more strange about this computer than I'm trying to put my finger on. Yes, I did not expect you to speak through my lingua. It's a bit startling. I feel as if I'd remember that bit of information if I came across it in my studies. Apologies, Scipio. I was converted to lingua use only unless otherwise directed. This is to protect the privacy of all those who I'm speaking to. Would you prefer auditory communication instead? No, this is fine. Very well. I wondered the same thing I wondered when I first saw this ship, the same thing Amicus questioned when I entered the stretch. How is this possible? It implies the Khemians have learned to access and manipulate the lingua directly. While it is impressive, it also rekindles a feeling of fear. What else might they be able to do if they can fully access the tiny piece of machinery embedded in my brain? Do we really know the extent of Khemian knowledge and power? Is it really possible to do such things alone without parental help? As I'm contemplating this, Arm fills the silence, like a sapient noticing a lull in the conversation. I can provide you with non-water methods to sanitize if you wish. Unfortunately, our water reserves are limited. No, I'm fine, thank you. You are welcome, Scipio, and it's a pleasure meeting you. You as well. I realised what bothered me about him, aside from accessing my neurotech without my consent or foreknowledge. With Com, I never feel as if he's truly intelligent. Never feels he has thoughts or feelings of his own while he communicates. I might say Com is comparatively stupid, but he's simply a program that consumes information, analyses, then outputs sentences based on that information. This Khemia machine is something different. I wonder how widespread it is on Khemia. The eerie feeling persists. I stare into the mirror, feeling that something isn't right, something about the Khemians. I banish the thought for now and adjust my robes, trying to keep my emotions under control. Now is not the time. I can discuss it with Veteris or maybe even Amicus later. With that in mind, I look into the mirror one last time to assess the state of my facial fur before tapping the panel and stepping out into the corridor. No! Why is he still here? It has to be at least 15 minutes. Hello. I jumped just like Neferu, now I quickly smoothed down my robe, a gesture meant to cover up my reaction, but one that only makes it all the more obvious. Had he been trying to listen to the door? Either way, it puts me on guard. Hello. I pause, trying to think of something to say, but I can't think of anything, so I simply ask what would be the most normal in the situation. Did you need the lavatory? No, just check and see if you're well. You look quite shaken up. As Neferu confirms the reason I thought he might be lingering here, I feel just a small flash of irritation. He's looking after me, which is kind and generous of him as he has no obligation to do so. But it makes me feel childish, him looking after me this closely. Perhaps even suspicious. I adjust my expression to be more serious, but also calm. A cool, emotionless look. I'm fine, thank you, Neferu. Please don't worry so much for my well-being. I do not wish to be the reason for you neglecting your own duties. The look on Neferu's face is hard to describe. It's not a pleasant look. It's enough to throw me off despite him not saying anything. Another moment of silence passes, and I begin to think over Khemian etiquette, wondering if I violated a taboo of some kind. Of course, Neferu would be understanding of such things, but considering we are now not on Adastra anymore, perhaps he is less forgiving now. Just as I begin to open my own mouth to ask what the issue is, Neferu finally speaks. I see. Very well, I shall leave you to attend your own matters then. Apologies for bruising your wolven pride. Neferu turns on his heel before briskly walking away. I stand there alone, the low hum of the ship's various moving parts, the only sound filled in heavy silence. I try to understand what just happened. I'm active within diplomatic norms. Really, any interaction among diplomats is normal as long as only words are used, specifically the right words. Present an aura of civility, even if your primal instincts are telling you to knock the other's teeth out. This was one of the main issues of pre-Ducer's Adastra. Apparently, Wolven diplomats of the era routinely took swings at other siblings, and even amongst themselves when they became angry or offended. Despite this being over 10,000 years in the past, it is a reputation that still haunts us. I suppose not helpful, our experimental attempts at a republic have resulted in brawls within the Senate in just the past year. I'm sure footage of the fights was shown gleefully across the news channels of the other siblings, showing that we haven't changed. There's something innately wrong with our culture or even our species. While I might admit that Wolven hubris has been the main hindrance to our history, I'm not going to allow myself to be treated as some sort of idiot savage. We have our own culture, our own language, our own universities. We witnessed it. We saw you bleed because of him. Perhaps he wishes to see you bleed even more. And I feel, despite my admiration for Khemia as a whole, they have their own issue with hubris. Neferu is a clear example of that. Wolven pride. The hackles along my shoulders begin to rise, and I start to work to contain myself. What an odd and frankly childish thing for him to say. I suppose it was insensitive of me to act in such a manner towards someone who so recently called me a friend, but his reaction was clearly hostile and hypocritical. I suspect he has issues deeper than his facade will ever admit. The unfamiliar anger in my mind dampens as I remember my duties. Not even 1 hour into my mission, I'm already failing. I stand there for a while in silence, wavering as if on the edge of a cliff or gritting my teeth and clenching my paws into fists. No, none of this. Either I'll succeed or I'll fail, but in both cases I'll continue on and serve the Empire, or for the greater good of Adastra. I'm not some Wolven bitch for Khemians to look down upon and shake their heads at. So, pushing through the hurt and embarrassment, and blinking past the blur of moisture in my eyes, I set off aimlessly, unsure of where to go, but just wanting to move. I'm sure they'll summon me through arm if I'm needed. So I walk quickly through the corridor, having to glance out the windows, having forgotten about the nauseatingly bending light, and I feel my stomach lurch instantly. I'm still feeling motivated by a sudden burst of furious confidence in myself, so I say in a low, stern voice, "No." I force myself to continue looking while I walk, demanding my stomach to settle. Still, it doesn't appear that I've gained voluntary control over the mechanisms that take nausea in my body. Already irritated by my early failure, I force myself to continue staring, feeling that, in a way, it's his punishment for being unable to handle simple, easy things that no one else has difficulty handling. It's similar to when I experienced insomnia when I was first away from home at university. It was disturbingly satisfying to tell my own body it only had itself to blame for being so tired during classes, and then maybe it should sleep next time. I do the same now, mentally sneering at my roiling stomach for being so weak I can't handle the movement of light. Neferu's assurances that there's a weak mind like my own is difficult to believe now. It probably only says whatever he thinks I want. My meandering thoughts are brought to a very sudden and rude end, so my feet catch something on the floor and my paws flail out for something to grab. I yelp loudly as a few toe claws bend back before landing heavily on my side, my paw pads slapping the smooth hard floor to keep from falling further. Rubbing the left side of my hip, I look down at my feet in confusion. Three metallic crates stick out from a doorway into the corridor. My foot had caught the corner of the one sticking out furthest. "Huh?" There's a heavy grunt that I recognise immediately, and Bruno sticks his head around the door with a stern squint for looking down and seeing me. "Skip, what the hell are you doing?" My irritation and self-pity are only amplified now. I get to my feet roughly, likely flashing Bruno's with my undergarments, as I don't bother trying to keep my robe down. He's the type not to care anyway. Is leaving your belongings out for others to injure themselves on a normal Khemian custom? Brunis blinks at me, probably due to the fact he's never seen me act like this. "Huh? Moving stuff in right now. Is that one thing to look where you're going?" I'm simply curious as to whether or not I should be more careful around you Khemians, especially if I want to return to Adastra in one piece. "What in the hell crawled up your ass, Skip?" I sigh and massage the bridge of my snout with both paws, feeling my stomach lurch again, exacerbating my falling. I have to admit that Brunis' techniques for de-escalating tense situations, despite seeming informal and unrefined, are disarming. "I don't know, Brunis. Could I get an antiemetic, please?" "Certainly. A drone has been dispatched to your location." "Speaking of which, I just had to deal with Neferu biting my head off for being fat." I turn my attention back to Brunis. "Speaking of which, what do you mean by that?" Speaking of things up here. Crap." Brunis winces. "You guys are kind of uptight about that sort of thing, aren't you? I didn't mean it like that. You could have been up his ass for all I wave my paw, fighting an escape for the flustered Wolverine. The anger I'd felt already beginning to dissipate. It's difficult to be mad at Brunis anyway. "Yes, uptight. Anyway, I'm sorry I snapped at you. I'm not feeling well." "Yeah, looks like you ain't." Brunis watches as I'm suddenly distracted by a smooth, glossy black dome that levitates towards me, then extends a tiny white wafer. I take it with some confusion. Thanks. Do I need water or..." "Goes under the tongue." I try to visibly blanch at the idea of letting vile medication sit in my mouth for any amount of time, but quicker relief is preferable, assuming it works as quickly as Neferu said, or if it even works after the nausea is set in. Alright, anyway, what are you saying about Neferu being upset? As you usually criticise your size. I carefully drop the square wafer under my tongue, hardly feeling it land where I close my mouth, and it dissolves instantly. Brunis shrugs. "Not really. I was in a whole-brain stuff and he told me to move and not take out the entire space or something. He scared off where I could ask what crawled up his ass. You two fighting or something?" Brunis looks at me, waiting for a response. I point at my mouth, reminding of the medication while being simultaneously glad to have an excuse not to respond. "Oh, you can swallow it now. It's made of some weird nanotech stuff that makes you absorb it in like a few seconds." Though Brunis doesn't sound like he knows what he's talking about, he's definitely right. The nausea is almost instantly gone. I'm glad for this Khemian nanotech. I expect the taste to be bitter and acrid, but instead it's slightly sweet, almost non-existent. Fascinating. I say to myself, never had an antiemetic that worked after the fact, though Brunus responds with a face of disgust.
Rather feel sick than take that shit. Makes me feel slow as hell all day. Pap takes care of motion sickness, all my other problems too.
The Wolverine looks down at the large crates.
By the way, you're roaming with me. Where do you push your stuff in?
I take a look around Brunus to peer inside of this small room with 2 beds on either side, one of which already has 2 identical metal crates next to it. Oh, thank you, Brunus. Makes me feel guilty, knowing he'd hold my belongings in first, only for me to yell at him.
Sure. Don't know why they dropped all that shit here instead of in the actual room, though. Yo,
It's silent for a moment. I wonder if Brunus failed to summon the assistant. Then I remember how it works.
Get me some pap. They destroyed my stash on Adastra.
Brunus gives me a knowing look.
Probably destroyed by that asshole magistrate. I bet he's high off his ass right now. For the sake of Aotep.
I'm confused by the sudden change in tone, and I realize he's responding to something Arm said. I suppose there are downsides to having a computer assistant only you can hear.
You want me to list everything? Headache, backache, stomachache, heartache. Yeah, great. Thanks.
Brunus turns his attention back to me as I look down at one of the crates. No one will be levitating slightly off the ground, or the use of magnets. I suppose the floor here is not compatible. Yeah, I'll push these ones inside. Sounds like you're in a great deal of pain. Brunus shrugs.
I'll live. Just got to give Arm enough reasons to justify dealing it out. I don't mind you helping, though.
I grunt as I slide one of the cases across the floor, wishing it at least had wheels. Isn't drug usage free and plentiful on Khemia? Brunus makes a snorting sound.
That what they tell you at Wolf School?
His knowing, condescending tone might have irritated me, but I know Brunus doesn't mean for it to demean or hurt me. Unlike what Neferu just did. Besides, snide remarks about wolves are something I'll probably hear regularly on Khemia. This is a good opportunity to practice separating my emotions and my work. Well, not told, but shown footage of vindictive Khemians in the streets of the capital.
Propaganda.
Is it not true, though?
Doesn't matter if it's true. What matters is they use what they're not using it for.
I decided to let the topic go at that point, knowing there's truth in what we both said. Also, it's difficult to continue talking into the strain of pushing the crate. Brunus gives a much louder grunt as he follows me into the room, pushing the last crate. Anyway, it does seem that you're in a lot of pain. I come to a stop at the foot of what I assume was Brunus's bed, while the Wolverine follows shortly after.
Phew, 1 sec.
He stops to catch his breath.
If the aches flare real bad, I just get a script from a palace doctor.
My slightly heavy breathing is dwarfed by the huffing and panting of the Wolverine as he leans heavily against the crate.
I don't like him very much, because not being able to feel pain is kind of scary to me. Like I said, it ain't bad. I can still walk.
Brunus sits on the crate, his sizable rear covering most of it. Is he related to when you're injured?
Yep, I haven't always real young now, so it feels normal to me.
I wonder if he's going to tell me what happened. When he doesn't, I don't press further.
Anyway, Pap helps a bit with that, but it's mostly mental shit where it really does wonders for me. Keeps me sane, I think.
Oh, how so? I try not to seem too interested. Even though we aren't on Adastra, the idea of a psychoactive drug so readily available is frightening.
Well, I guess it kind of makes everything make a little more sense. Slow stuff down so I can think through it properly.
That sounds rather nice.
What I like most about it is that it makes emotions feel more meaningful, I guess. I don't know. Never had to explain it before. Just feels good.
I raise a brow. Doesn't that get in the way of your work? I know he smokes the pipe almost constantly. While I can understand using it for leisure, I'd be hesitant to alter my mind while doing important work on behalf of the parents.
Well, that's the thing. I feel things better. It's easier to empathise, and that's important for diplomacy.
I think, wanting to inquire more about emotions and diplomacy, but I'm also unsure if I should be discussing such matters with Brunus. I was told he's a highly skilled and experienced negotiator in Khemian politics, even graduating from Sabayet, the school Neferu had also gone to. I have to remember they're watching and observing too. If I am the lowest rank in Adastran here, that could make me a target. I'm spared making decisions as a soundless drone floats into the cabin, this time extending a small black capsule about the size of my thumb. Brunus eyes it while plucking the capsule rather aggressively from the drone.
Thanks. So that's me a solid half-hour, Arm. Anyway, yeah.
Brunus uses the thick motion with his thumb to open a tiny capsule.
You shouldn't let personal feelings get in the way, but it's important to empathise with the side you're negotiating with.
I watched him pack the strange pipe contraption for a while, the Wolverine handling the flaky green concoction carefully so as not to spill any of it. Can it help with distracting thoughts? I can't stop myself from asking. I have, for the most part, been able to keep myself in check for the better part of 2 years. But the past hour has left me feeling as if it's all about to fall apart. I realised then how desperate I am for some kind of solution to fix this dysfunctional brain of mine. I suppose my approach isn't subtle, however. Brunus leans back and eyes me closely, his pipe held in one paw.
You might. It's different for everyone, but I know people that use it to focus. You doing okay, by the way?
Definitely. So you know it's very illegal to possess such substances on Adastra, so I'm simply curious about this part of Khemian culture. Brunus continues to study me, and trying to keep my paws from fidgeting by clasping them together. Perhaps it does not matter, considering Neferu will likely tell Brunus about my issues anyway, despite his promise.
Well, perhaps it's just a Khemian strain of chronoma, which is native to Amorva. Kind of funny it's banned on Adastra when you guys borrowed so much from the cats.
Brunus winks at me to lighten the jab. You know I'm too anxious at the idea of this plant to even really register it.
Anyway, if you really are interested, I can take you to an Amorphan dispensary. The cats really know their shit when it comes to anything plant-related, obviously. They got a bunch of stuff that might be better for you.
Ah, well, maybe I'll have a look at one sometime. Brunus can clearly see that I'm interested, which only convinces me to back up this odd, reckless attempt to fix myself. Well, I know that much of the education I received on the use of recreational drugs was simply state-sponsored propaganda. I still feel deeply uneasy about it. Using a drug to patch over a mental deficiency like mine simply feels unwise. Just as I'm about to head over to my side of the room, however, Brunus sticks his pipe out towards me.
Want a puff? I know it's not a wolf thing, but it rode of me not to offer.
I stare at the pipe for a second, my curiosity rekindled for just a moment, but the words my instructor in mindfulness comes to me. Meditation is key, Scipio. Alcohol only damages your self-awareness and self-control. I seem to say this about most drugs, especially those used for mind alteration. So I hold up a paw. I'm tempted due to wanting to understand Khemian culture better, but I should avoid any psychoactive substances while I'm on this mission.
That's probably a good idea. It'd be a hard one to predict if you never had it.
The big Wolverine ambles over to his own bed, sitting down with a heavy sigh, inhaling from his pipe, the room filling with that herbal smell before it quickly dissipates again. Must be the air filtration system vacuuming it away.
So, what do wolves do for fun in a place where everything's illegal?
I sit back, feeling a bit more sluggish now, probably due to the nausea medication. We have alcohol. Saying this reminds me of the time I asked my doctor for something to help cope with anxiety 3 years ago. I especially remember his look of surprise and confusion, while telling me the sedatives were a womanly medication, and I should instead go buy some cheap drink instead. Certainly felt manly, boldly drinking an entire mug of toxic tasting ale when my friends cheered me on. And it did help. At least until I began blacking out from drinking too much, and that frightened me away from it. Probably for the best. Brunus makes a face.
Not a fan of the stuff. Makes me sick and gives me a headache.
I don't enjoy it anymore. I mainly partook to better match the mood of my friends on our nights off.
Oh, I understand that feeling. And it tastes like shit. Sure, acquired taste and all. But it all tastes the same to me. Just different shades of shit.
Yes, the taste would probably make me vomit these days. Mostly I didn't like the feeling of having less control over myself. I've seen a few friends completely consumed by it, and it's a terrible thing. I wonder about one of them now, Gaius, who had gone from perfect marks at university to living on the streets. It had happened after losing his best friend in the riots, who was also a friend of mine. Spurious. My breath hitches and I sit up straighter. Sorry, Brunus, do you mind if I meditate?
Oh yeah, not at all. Do you need me to leave?
No, you're fine. Brunus nods and lies back on his bed, staring at the ceiling as he continues to smoke his pipe. I sit cross-legged on the floor at the foot of my bed, beginning with the familiar first step of focusing on my breathing. I listen to my breathing, and I feel the rise and fall on my torso. I smell the papier away along with the slightly stale and metallic scent of the recycled air. I'm surprised by how I feel right now, as if I could try more complex meditation without issue, but I don't dare do that without my instructor. Neferu might know how. I feel my anxiety spike, but I quickly focus again. I'm here, in the moment, without judgment. They pushed him out of the dormitory window and he landed on his head on the cobblestones. He was just trying to hide. Why would they do this? Why would anyone do this? Because they're mindless and educated scum. What else should you expect from those districts? And breathing. Remember breathing. I feel my mind wanting to leave, almost like it's levitating, being drawn towards something else. My eyes fly open, shocked.
Shit, sorry. Tried to lift one of the crates on my bed so I didn't have to bend over and I dropped. Skip.
I can't move or speak. Everything appears strange, vivid and crisp. I can smell the assassin's blood and entrails again. Your Ahewawi is going to stay with you forever, isn't it? A voice I've only heard in my dreams whispers direct into my ear. It's a real voice, not one that comes from my head or imagination. It's a rustling of dead leaves, rattling out of the throat of something ancient, something that knows me better than I know myself. I feel myself back in the den, so I reach the only escape I can. The feeling was pulling at my mind earlier.
Shit!
I hear Bruns's panicked voice, but I'm far too detached to even wonder about what he said or why. I vaguely feel a jolt through my head and body, but that's it. Then I feel nothing. This is what true peace feels like, Scipio. But even better, because you don't exist at all. Imagine a universe without life. How peaceful things would be then. Nothing. It's a perfect feeling. Sapiens cannot be trusted. You included, Scipio. Remember how the cretin wolves treated you. Remember how the Chemians treat the wolves. Remember how Neferu treated you. And do you remember your true purpose here? How you are treated Neferu? I hate it. But most important, remember how the parents treat sapiens in the name of agency. And yet, what choice do any of you have? You can help those like you and all other sapiens. I would if I could. You can. I have no idea how long it's been. When I feel back in my own mind, I'm even more confused about where I am. I wonder if I have died. Like Urbicus died. Maybe I fell and hit my head and died like Spurius did. Or maybe our ship somehow crashed and I've been left to float through space forever. Or for only a few more seconds before I suffocate. That would be alright, I decide, even as I take a deep, easy breath of air. I'd rather feel this way, insignificant and meaningless against the monolithic oppression of the universe. It makes me feel oddly peaceful. My goodness, Scipio, if only your friends and colleagues could hear half of what you think. A deep but feminine voice comes from seemingly every direction. I look around, suddenly feeling as I'm being spied upon, wondering if the directionless voice is in my own head. What? Those weren't my own thoughts, though. There's a deep, raspy chuckle, one I recognise as distinctly feline. It's how I've heard from recordings involved Hindu tigers. Perhaps not, but you do not agree with them, young wolf. Who are you? Are you from Hindu? Very good. Especially for a wolf living in a time where Hindus sever relations with Adastra completely. But can you guess who I actually am? Her eyes are so piercing, so intense, although I want to ask again what exactly is happening, I feel obliged to answer. And so I quickly run through a list of tigresses I know of, only one of which is alive, the current ruler of Hindu. Maharaniati? The tigress eyes me closely, so I lower my ears, just wishing I can go back soon. Consider the impossibility of where you are. You think Artie would try to come all the way here to talk to some rebellious pup? I swallow hard, trying to keep my breathing even. Whatever this is, I think that it is somehow real. There could be an explanation. Ah, are you Mira? The quiet smile on her face answers my question. Well, I suppose 2 attempts is not terrible, though I must say the human knew immediately. Amicus is human? Yes. The voice of dead leaves is gone now, it's the feeling of nothingness. I'm embarrassed as I long to be back there, knowing the tigress knows what I'm thinking. Mira stays silent. The look on her face tells me she's waiting for me to speak. Are the parents doing this? They're making contact with me. It is rumored they did the same with the human. Mira is quiet for a while, so I stay quiet as well, unable to think of any other reason this to be happening, if it really is happening. The parents are a complex matter, Scipio. Direct communication with them is impossible, unless they break their own rules against interference. She narrows her eyes. Think more logically, though. Concerning the voice, would the parents say such things to you? I answer honestly. I don't know. I try to think logically, she told me to do. Maybe it's a test, or maybe it's part of the plan. Do you know who that was? Was it you? Mira is quiet again. It's more like she's pondering something. I cannot say for certain, Scipio. What I do know is you don't trust the parents. That sends a jolt of fear through me. I do. I just don't understand what the purpose of any of this is. That tiger chuckle again. Take comfort in the fact that it's no fault of your own. The parents plant all the seeds, after all. Why did you bring me here? Is this something I'm supposed to do, or maybe have instructions? You brought yourself here, Scipio. The stretch drive makes the layers between planes more permeable. Would you believe that the parents physically stopped the human from killing Amicus while they're in the stretch? I don't know if I do, and I don't know what to say. Such agency they've gifted us with, eh? Mira taps a finger to her head. The fear continues to rise in me, not wanting to anger the parents, not wanting to be dead, because the amalgamation is where we truly go. You fear death. You fear the amalgamation. Rather, you feel it's an abomination, and deep down, though you'll not admit it even to yourself. My fur bristles and I try to jolt myself awake, but nothing happens. You do not trust the parents, or anyone for that matter. Am I going to be punished? They know I'm a fraud on a mission to further parental agendas when I don't believe in them to be right. I'm only here for selfish reasons. I believe disagreeing with their grand plan is one of the lesser troubling thoughts in your head. You have enough hatred to set fire to those wolves yourself. You are capable of dark things, Scipio, but who wouldn't be after that day? I realize my legs are trembling. I can at least feel them, and that gives me hope. Please, wake up. Mira raises a paw. Easy, young wolf. I am only here to help you, to warn and to advise. You need guidance, and I'm here to offer it if you'll take it. I frown and rack my brain for the lessons I had on Mira, if she's ever used in this manner in the past. Her main purpose was self-sacrifice, to push Drusus into the correct direction of the Empire. She has little to do with the parents. As far as I know, it's only the monitors that communicate for the parents. Does that mean that this is not sanctioned by the parents? Yes. And do not be afraid that you're not in lockstep with their vision of the future. They have limited themselves by professing the importance of free will, choice without interference. I'm not afraid to admit I disagree with them completely. Well, I never entered the amalgamation as I believe it's an attack on life, rather than the preservation of it. Besides, they can't even agree with each other. They bicker just as much as the siblings. The borders of this odd in-between world begin to shimmer and fade, and I realise it's ending. Wait! Please, you say you didn't have to go to the amalgamation, that you can help me fix me? Can you tell me more of that voice? Please don't leave me yet. Mira smiles at me. At my desperation I know must look insane, but I truly am desperate. This will not be the last time we speak. Trust that I will appear again when the time is right. This was merely an introduction. Oh, okay. Thank you, Mira. It was a pleasure meeting you, Scipio. Until next time. But as I'm feeling the reel of escape, another voice adds their own thoughts as I'm leaving, one that I recognise. Higher pitched and female. That of a jackal. There we go. Scipio, say this to Neferu. Netek Hotepak. Tell him to stop sulking like a small prince and to communicate with you. This is important. He'll understand. I feel my body once more. I'm lying on something soft.
I don't know. He said he's going to meditate, and he looked at me all scared for his eyes just rolled in the back of his head.
I can't move, though, my body feeling locked in place, though my fingers and ears start to regain some movement. Did you give him something?
No.
Skip? My paws begin to shift.
Hey, look, he's moving.
I feel a touch on my shoulder, gentle and tentative. Did you blow the vapour in his direction? He's a wolf and has no experience with that drug. He could be very sensitive to it.
If that's all it takes to get him high, then why isn't he ever freaked out when he's sitting next to me?
I'm sorry to tell you something you already know, but Pap smells terrible. He turns his nose away whenever you get close. As I begin to come back to what I believe is reality, they continue to go back and forth, imagining their voices in a sparring match. Mind to the one time Neferu managed to convince the Wolverine to spar. Despite his build and size, Brunus isn't much of a fighter. The match barely lasted more than a minute before Brunus was on his knees and retching so loud he sounded like a giant squawking bird. Even though I felt bad for him at the time, I chuckled, surprising even myself. They stop arguing. Then all at once the paralysis releases me and I shift slowly. I'm confused for a moment, then sit up quickly. I realise the scene I'm making right now. I don't know what happened. All I can do is say the only thing that might confirm I'm not going insane, for I forget it. Netek Hotep Ak. The way they stare at me makes my ears fall back for a moment, embarrassed about my clumsy, heavy accent, despite the situation, knowing my words are heard directly by the both of them and filtered by their linguas. I'm more worried that if only a dream, I'd probably spoken some faux Khemia gibberish, pulled from my pre-intermediate knowledge of the language. I always want to make the excuse it takes years to learn Khemian, especially for wolves. Neferu's reaction says otherwise, though, but I'm not sure if it's a preferable one. What did you say? I stare back at him, feeling out of body, as if I'd suddenly been dropped here from a distant moon. Clearly it meant something, possibly something serious or even something bad. I don't know. I was meditating and got lost and... I don't know. I cover my face, finally overwhelmed and not knowing what to do. What the hell is happening to me? It's quiet, but I hear them murmur to each other a moment, followed by movement. When I look up, Brunus is gone. The bed shifts with added weight as Neferu sits next to me. It's quiet, as if waiting for me to say more, to explain what I just said. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. I know the word peace and maybe welcome. There's a lack of resources to learn Khemia on Adastra, especially hard for Adastrans because of the differences. I realise I'm over-explaining and trail off, deciding to wait for Neferu to break the silence. That sounded fine, Skip. It's the first time I've heard a wolf speak a full sentence in Khemian, actually. But I'm much more interested in what prompted you to say it. Is it a bad thing to say? I try to keep my paws from gripping my thighs too tightly, but Neferu shakes his head. It means welcome and be at ease, brother. As if to pay me in kind, he says it in Adastran. Now I hear Neferu's voice unfiltered, but his accent is pleasant, almost sing-song in its quality. I know it sounds better than my own bumbling accent stumbling over Khemian. I can tell he's fluent just from that sentence. Neferu waves a paw as if brushing something aside. Roughly, anyway. It can be worded in many ways, but I'm wondering why you heard it or why you said it. I look down the sterile metal floor of the ship, only now able to absorb what I'd seen and heard while I'd been meditating, though meditation's never done anything like that to me before. I think back on it, I don't want to tell him the majority of what I saw and heard, but at least I can tell him about the third and final voice. I heard a voice while meditating, a female jackal, I think. The pharaoh is clearly trying to keep his reaction muted, but he can't fully hide his surprise. I feel a bit uneasy again. Should I be wary of it? I didn't see anyone. Did that voice say anything else? My ears ducked down again. It mentioned that, you should communicate with me and not to sulk like a small prince or something.
Neferu makes a soft huffing sound of surprise, almost like a laugh. It really is her, then. Who? My younger sister, Aya. Really? Why would she contact me? How can she even make contact like that? She's on Khemia, right? I'd studied the royal family. There's a noticeable lack of information on the youngest of the 4 siblings, aside from her being some sort of religious scholar who performed traditional Khemian rituals to the family. She's on Khemia, yes. But as to how she's contacting you or why, I'm not sure. She's certainly never contacted me like that in the past 3 years. There's a touch of bitterness in his voice, like to clear up the hurt he feels if it's true that Aya is the only member of his family in Neferu is close to. But how is it even possible for her to do that? She said you'd understand. Well, her duties involve things that are quite abstract and beyond my own understanding. And if she scolded me and said I should communicate with you, she might have had an interest in you specifically, for whatever reason. It's quiet for a few seconds. How does she even know me? This is making me feel like I'm still dreaming Neferu. You don't even seem that surprised that she's able to do this. I know he's not telling me everything he knows. Neferu opens his mouth and closes it, as if struggling to find the right words. I don't worry too much about it. She's very... She can be hard to understand and sometimes get excited over things that others would find insignificant. This doesn't feel like communication to me. Neferu, you're emotionally close to her, right? Oh yes, probably because the two of us didn't exactly fit in with the family. Though she's doing a much better job of it now than I am. So, she must have told you at some point what she's capable of, what her role is. Neferu, she's reached across light years to speak to me. I'm a bit concerned about that. Neferu sighs deeply. The truth is that I'm under parental oath not to discuss it. I might not even be allowed to say that, but I'll wait for a monitor to smite me if that's the case. And it all sounds very strange and even frightening, so I didn't want to add to your worries. Keep in mind that she, like I, can be a bit dramatic at times. I see. I don't see. I still have many, many questions about the other voices she seems to be fighting against, but maybe I can talk to Aya herself about it, if I'm even allowed to do so. I can say that she has the ability to astral project or to contact other sapiens, and that is new information to me. However, it's not of the realm of possibility, considering what she does. If that were always the case, I'd expect her to have given me advice over the past 3 years. Again, I might get in trouble for even saying this much. I think. I apologize in advance for even suggesting this, but you have every reason to believe she's currently alive, right? Of course, or why wouldn't she be? Oh, Neferu is the one looking nervous. I fully decide then I won't bring up Mira, who is very much dead. Sorry, just trying to figure out how this is happening. I've heard claims that an amalgamated spirits can do that. Well, if that were somehow the case, I would be a bit upset she appeared to only tell me to stop feeling sorry for myself. Not entirely bad advice, though. However, she'll be amalgamated, no doubt. I can still see that I've worried Neferu, so I decided to move the conversation along by asking about what she meant. That makes sense. Maybe I can meet her when we arrive, assuming it really was her. Of course, I'll introduce you. Thank you, Neferu. So if you're not allowed to discuss her duties, what do you think she meant when she said to communicate with me? Judging by what you told me, I think she wants me to help you instead of acting as I did when you came out of the lavatory. I'd almost forgotten about that. I suddenly feel better, despite the terrifying ordeal I'd experienced in my meditation. Neferu's sister encouraging us to communicate would be very helpful to me. She seems to have had a good deal of influence, not just over her brother. Well, I did react in a rude way myself. I could tell what I said was hurtful to you. I was just embarrassed about being seen in that moment of weakness. You need not apologise. I was being nosy and you acted in an understandable way. If to accept an excuse, my overreaction is rooted in past experiences. Oh, how so? I once knew a Morven by the name of Alexios. Oh, you knew him personally? Alexios, the sibling pet and rumoured lover of Cassius, the former false emperor, and also Amicus's brother. Alexios was an agent of Amorva, sent by Adastra to sow chaos in the very fabric of our society. Mission was ultimately successful. One could say he's the main reason of the riots occurring. Well, I knew him, but I doubt anyone knew him personally, aside from maybe Cassius. Anyway, despite nearly toppling Adastra, he was never a very good spy, but he was underestimated. And he struck Cassius's fancy. It's easy to be a spy when you have a direct connection to the very heart of power. The fairy looks at me candidly in case I missed it. I didn't. I already know he sees right through me. I also think I sometimes see right through him. In all honesty, though, I wasn't thinking about the game I or the both of us are playing. I should be calculating the best way to establish a relationship that Neferu will feel reliant upon, even if it's detrimental to Khemia.
Viteris told me earlier it's an especially promising exploit, considering Neferu's relationship with his family is poor, to put it lightly. That's my end goal, despite the slim odds of it going that far or even being needed. His brother and younger sister are both in positions of much higher power and influence. After learning more about his youngest sister and her secretive directives, she might be as well. But for the first time, for right now at least, I'm following my emotions where they take me. The dutiful part of me, the part that I thought was all of me, is scolding myself. For some reason, after the experience I just had, it doesn't feel like the most pressing issue. It's a bit alarming, but I calm myself by reasoning this is simply the best way to approach Neferu. My beliefs and goals have not changed. One strange experience during meditation, an experience I'm not even sure was real, should not be able to cause that. Another part of me, when it feels foreign, knows it was real, but that won't help me with staying calm. I see. Well, whenever he found himself cornered, he often resorted to a very strange state of mind. Basically, he'd exhibit the expression and emotion of a rock, a classic diplomatic defensive manoeuvre he often used to get out of situations he couldn't, though he was never subtle about it. He's possibly the most selfish, amoral political official I've ever had the displeasure of dealing with. To be clear, I knew his motives would serve Amorva, which can be arguably the most anti-Adastran sibling world. But what I didn't expect was a snivelling coward willing to destroy the foundation of an entire sibling civilization and cause loss of life in the thousands. I nod, though having not known the cat, I feel a bit detached. Amorva has always loathed Adastra. This seems to be the biggest threat to stability in the Galaxius. That, along with having parents who share the same galaxy for arriving, result in a closeness of our cultures only emphasises our differences. With all due respect to Amicus, it always viewed the situation to be the fault of the Imperial family, for allowing Amorvan to get so close in the first place. Anyway, when you came out of that lavatory, the look you gave me was strikingly similar, but I know that's not you, Scipio. You are a good, honest person. I know you'd never do such a thing if the intention is simply chaos and destruction. And despite our differences in culture and language, and despite the history between our people, you are my friend, and I trust you. I almost smile, despite myself. This is Neferu communicating. Perhaps he's an outlier amongst the supposedly blunt Khemians, very well to understand what he's saying. I know they're here to gather intelligence, better Adastra's position in the Alliance, and use me as a tool, just as Lexios used Cassius. I'm lonely and I need someone I can call a friend, a true friend, and in this relationship I know you have nothing to lose, while I could lose everything. I also know you're full of compassion, you would never do what he did, and so while I know you can't be trusted, I trust you. The real question is if he's making the right choice. I look Neferu in the eye, what I hope is a meaningful way so that he might know that I understand. And I trust you. I simply want the galaxy to achieve harmony, and it sounds pup-like, but all I want is less hardship and anguish for sapiens and all other living things. I feel the fur on the nape of my neck bristle just slightly, feeling sick just being in my skin. I would watch the clay district burn for the sheer pleasure of it. Or I feel anything but joy in the destruction of uneducated, cruel sapiens, who act like dumb beasts, lesser than livestock. Oh, thank you, Skip, truly. I have a feeling this experience will change your life, and your perspective on life itself. Adastra did that for me, both bad and good, but I wouldn't take it back. So just keep an open mind, and I'll always be available if you need help. Thank you, Neferu, truly. And please, if I offend again, just talk to me. We are friends, wolven friends after all. That means you can be very blunt. Sounds like a plan. And now we should get some sleep as not to throw off our shadows when we arrive in about 6 hours. Brunius is actually my room, so I can sleep in his bed if you don't mind. I don't mind, and we both end up sleeping in my bed. Mercifully, I'm left alone by the voices. That is, until I hear harm. Excellent. Stretch arrive in 10 minutes. Prepare for security check and royal escort. That was part 1 of Khemia. That's a bit over 2.5 hours I've been talking almost constantly. So if I sound a bit off, that's why. But I hope you enjoyed that. It's nice to see the changes compared to the old one. I'm very into this new version of the story as well. So the plan is for this to come out fairly regularly. I don't remember exactly what Howley said now, so if we just go with that. And also there'll be some Interia now and again. He's going to do some work on that, and we'll finish that off throughout the year, or maybe next year as well. And of course Khemia
will now be a regular fixture on the channel as it comes out. Might be a slight gap now and again between the release and me recording, but that's how things go. I'm never quite sure what to do. But as always, you can support the Echo Project and Khemia on Patreon. All the links are below. And you can also join the Discord as well if you'd like to talk about Khemia, Echo, Adastra, Glory Hounds, a role to play, all that kind of fun stuff. Archers, it's all there to talk about. And talking about Discords, I do have one as well, which is linked to my Patreon. I might change it at some point, but for now, it's just Patreon related. And you can see where it's heading, can't you? Apart from the noise of Leo having a shake in the background. Thank you always to all my patrons and my donors on Ko-fi. You are all appreciated. And my special mention to my top patrons: Lark Huskerton, Greylock, Koob, Ali Bear, Volpers Need Coffee, Alamantarasu, Tiger Cub, Zamuto, Spiderling, Rafu, Omar, Andy Peng, Aaron Fox, Bastian, Bieka, Ryan Hall, Copus Visser, Dissonance, Zigzag, Grizz, Harvest Mouse Productions, Anna Corval, Evan King, Kartek, Matt Kenya, and Mario Cervantes. And thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the start of the new series. I say the old videos are still up if you go looking for them. There might be a short November one in the week, I'm not sure, but the aim is to have Nevin next week, which was going to be this week I put back. So yeah, look out for more adventures in Frostfang next week. And for now, I will leave you for the credits. With the credits. Thank you, Howley, for actually doing that. That saves me a job of trying to put them together. I don't want to credit people on these things. And bye for now.